What a show we have in store for you tonight. We are debating, ranking, tiering the greatest wingers, wide men, inside forwards, whatever you want to call them. I don't really care. We know where they play ever to grace the Premier League. There's a few small bits of criteria with some wild cards thrown in. Premier League titles or Champions League titles are a must, and they must have played over 100 Premier League games. But we will allow 2 wild cards that haven't achieved one of those trophies to still be entered into the tiering list tonight. You can see the categories there. We have GOAT, which one person can be in, up to 5 Hall of Famers, and then as many as you want in top class, underrated, overrated. But we've got it there, the unranked category. If you don't believe the player deserves to even be ranked in top class, Hall of Famer or GOAT. You might think overrated as well, but we've got a number of categories there. And we have a brilliant, brilliant panel tonight, but you need to smash that like button for us right about now, ladies and gentlemen. You know the rules when it comes to the super chats. You can move a player up or down a category for 5, anywhere you want for 20, create new tiers for 50. We open a book up on all the players when you do it. It's just your way of donating and keeping the football terrace going. No pressure to do it if you choose not to, but we always pay homage to the people that have done it in the past. We keep the levels the same that you, the audience, set. I've got a great panel tonight. First of all, man like Daniel's back again, repping Chelsea, 110%. I know he's back in tonight in this fight. We've got little Tom Little back in the house, of course, back in them Scousers tonight. We've got Mad Mac, is Gav himself, all the way here with the deepest velvet tones on the internet, back in his club, Arsenal, tonight. We also have backing Arsenal right now with us. Jess is back again twice in one day with her grandma's cardigan on, doing her bits and bobs there. And of course, it wouldn't be a ranking show when we know that Salah's going to be involved without one of the most biased, one of the most loud, one of the most sort of unequivocal speakers, unyielding speakers on social media. This is football himself. Husib is here with us in the house. We've also got George. You all know George from Jess's show, She Knows Arsenal, joining us a little bit later on as well. Ches might be here. It's a big panel tonight doing this. How are we all, people? We all good?
Oh, bless.
Yes.
We're all ready for
All
tonight.
good except that intro where you called me biased, but we move.
You're very biased. You're one of the most biased people I've ever met in my life. But it's all good. You're allowed to be biased. You're a Liverpool fan. It is what it is. Let's jump straight into this without any further ado. Tom Little, I'm coming to you first, and I'm going to pick your first individual for you. And I don't know who am I going to give you to go first with. It's going to be an interesting one, this. I'm picking first for you. So you can either pick him as a wild card or not. I'll do an easy one. Luis Nani.
What are the categories again?
Categories are just there. So GOAT, Hall of Famer, top class, underrated, overrated, unranked. Luis Nani.
Well, he's won a couple of Premier Leagues, but I don't think he's done enough to get into top class. But I don't think there's a category for him because I don't even think he's underrated. I don't know. I'll put him in overrated for now because I don't think there's a proper category for him.
It's interesting. I mean, he's someone like, I think he's a little bit underrated, Nani. Man United fans didn't really rate him that much when he left, and then it was like, he was really good, wasn't he? What came after it was like, shit. But I hear you on that one. That's quite an easy one to start with. That was quite an easy one to start with there. Jess, you're up next, and I'm giving you your first, and I'm going to give you Samir Nasri. Arsenal turncoat, City legend. Where are you placing him, Jess? Where are you placing him?
He's not a City legend, is he? Do they really consider him a legend? No way. Extremely talented, but never hit the heights that he was really supposed to, mostly because he was an asshole, so he's very, very talented player. I mean, come on. What is he, like 30-something years old and he's already dead in his career? I would say overrated. Like, he has to go in something like that, or unranked, one of those. Like,
where do you want to put him? Go and speak with you. Where do you want to put him, Jess?
Unranked
Samir Nasri.
Yeah.
I mean, was he a drugs treat? I swear he got banned for drugs.
I mean, he's nobody's legend. He won things, but like, I don't think, was he integral to Manchester City winning things, or was he just just somebody there? I think he existed in that team. He wasn't anything special. And again, he was an asshole. And so you have to, if you're not in like top class, you have to stay at a club and just become a legend there and just rack up numbers. I don't think he did that. So unranked, like there's so many good players on these lists. I think you could put him in unranked and feel good about it.
Fair enough. Hussam, your first pick of the night, and I'm giving you Iron Robin of Chelsea.
Oh my God.
And this is, but let me just say this again. This is what these players have done during their Premier League time, not what they did before or after. The Premier League only. Not so it could be Champions League, League Cup, FA Cup, but when they play for a Premier League team.
Look, in the Premier League, Arjen Robben is definitely not in the top 2 categories 100% because he had his best days obviously with Bayern. He I'd argue he probably played better for Madrid than he did for Chelsea. I think at Chelsea I would say I'd rank him at underrated. He was probably just an underrated winger in the league. Like I don't really think anyone ever looked at Arjen Robben like that when he was with Chelsea. That's the issue. So I'm gonna put him in underrated.
Underrated. What do you reckon? What are you making of that, Dan? As a Chelsea fan, do you feel like he's underrated? You're on mute, bro.
Yeah, no, I think considering the categories, yeah, probably he goes in underrated. But just to correct us on something, he was in the PFA Team of the Year 04-05, so he was rated in the Premier League.
And Hussam, that counts for everything, doesn't it?
Because he loves his personal awards.
Terry, come on. You know, I speak on the totality of everything. It's not just one award. I talk about all awards. So come on, don't do this. I said in the Premier League, he like when I say underrated, no one respected him like that. But when he went to Bayern and Madrid, it's a different story. So it's just simple as, man. Come on.
Interesting take there. Daniel, your first pick, and I'm giving you... I'm going to go for a real big one here very early on for us. Sadio Mane.
Can I just see the I think Sadio Mane goes in top class. Look, at the end of the day, what one thing I will always say is that, like, I hate Liverpool just because of their fans. Their fans are some of the worst fans like ever. They die hard on their own. And look, it's cool. It's good to protect your own. That's what a fan should do. You should be so protective of your players to the point where you're so disillusioned to the whole world that Sadio Mane is the best footballer in the world, as James Redmond said. But look, at the end of the day, I think he's a top class footballer. I think people forget his Southampton days. I won't use my hate for Liverpool to deny any of their players. You know me, I don't cap ever. And Mane at Southampton was balling. I think in 2 out of his 3 seasons there, I might be wrong, don't quote me on it, but I think he got double-digit goals. He was one of the few, like, you know, where there's and Klopp also used that to his advantage in terms of figuring out a striker winger, who he could bring to his team to continue that level of output. So he already had that output in him.
He's one goal away from 100, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
The output was always there even before Liverpool. So yeah, he's a top class winger for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players that when Liverpool signed him, I was so gutted.
United should have got him. They wanted him for time.
Yeah, again, this you know, when I talk about the club doing things they shouldn't do. So Man United wanted Sadio Mane. LVG said no, I would prefer Anthony Martial. That's the club again. And these are all, you know, the little things that people go, oh, your owners are great, they spent money. No. The owners and the club allowed us to buy a manager, a player for him, as opposed to buying a player for the club. And whenever you buy managers, players solely that sit outside what the club is trying to build for, you're on the road to ruin. Do you know what I mean? Because it worked for LVG. It was pretty good for LVG. And then LVG left. And then it's like, shit, you got this, not this dud, but you've got someone that isn't in the eyes of the new manager. And then the new manager gets his own system and play it. It's just crazy. Anyway, yeah, Mane there, put into top class there. Man like Gav, I'm coming to you for your first one, bro. And I'm giving you Steve McManaman.
Yeah, I love the nostalgia.
So he could be a wild card because he didn't win a Premier League or a Champions League. So if you want to include him as one of the 2 wild cards on this list, because from now moving forward in these tiering ranks, to be in the top echelons, you have to have won a Premier League or a Champions League whilst being here, because we've got to start having a little bit of a cut-off point. But we've allowed a few wild cards. Steve McManaman, would you put him on this list?
Yeah, we have to do that just for your sales. You know what I mean? Like, but look, there's a reason why a team of Real Madrid's ilk want a player of this quality. And during lockdown, I remember watching the Euro 96 reruns again. And as an adult, it was just so much nicer and it was amazing to see how good Steve McManaman actually was. Underrated winger. He was phenomenal. He had skills for days. He could play playing wide left, playing wide right, playing a 4-4-2. Oh, he's brilliant player. So yeah, underrated for me, Steve McManaman.
Yeah,
also won the League Cup as well. He scored a brace in the League Cup final against Birmingham 3-0.
Listen, you kind of pulled a face on that. Is he one of those Liverpool players that you've got like because he did Liverpool dirty, he ran his contract down, left for free, went Real Madrid, but like for me as a technical football player, was one of the best Liverpool have had in the Premier League era. Like he was every bit as good technically as any other player you've had since. He was such a good player.
I think with Steve McManaman, if Mo Salah and Mane didn't exist and the last 4 years didn't exist, he'd probably be Liverpool's best ever, I'd argue, winger in the Premier League era. But look, to be fair, I think McManaman probably played better at Madrid than he did at Liverpool, I would argue. I think he probably had better days over there. So the same reasoning, I just think when it comes to Steve McManaman, was he highly rated in the Prem? I would say yes. So I wouldn't put him in the GOAT, obviously, or the second one. I'd probably put him in the third one. Was it top class, if I'm not mistaken?
Top class, yeah, top class.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in the third tier of wingers in the Premier League, but that's just me.
Okay. So my first pick. Who wants to pick my first person for me? Tom, go for it. Who you picking for me?
If
you can see the list.
Let's give you David Beckham.
Ooh. See, David Beckham.
I know you like David.
Yeah, I do. He was my childhood hero. Born in the same hospital, went to the same school, lived a few streets apart. He's just as good looking as me. Like the similarities between Becks and me are astounding. Tattoos, not as many as him, but you know what I mean. We're like brothers, basically. Dave, hope you're good, bruv. Doesn't like being called Dave, actually, so I shouldn't say that. But no, on a real level, top class player. He is. The maddest thing is that eras change. Like I watch the way KDB crosses the ball now, and everyone's like, "I've never seen anything like it." And then I check the passport, and I'm like, "Bro, you're born in 1997 plus, bro. You don't remember it because you weren't alive, or you were on the mum's tit. You were sucking mummy's tit when David Beckham was doing what KDB was doing, man. Apologies, but breastfed, guys. Maybe you were on the bottle. Maybe mum didn't breastfeed, whatever reasons, you know what I mean? But like, that's none of you lot. That's just in general, mate. Like, not everyone breastfeeds. Like, there's no judgment here. No judgment here. It's not as healthy, but you know. Anyway, I'm joking. Anyway, I don't want. I'm talking about everyone's mummy's titties. I don't know what I'm talking about for. But like Beckham for me, like I would put him in top class, maybe even underrated. If Beckham, it's weird. What I've kind of noticed with players, and we're going to get onto this a bit deeper a bit later, when they're superstars and they have fame outside football, there's also this level of hatred that comes towards them more so than anybody else. It's almost, who do you think you are? Because he was good looking. He married, like, I don't think youngsters also understand. He married a Spice Girl. The Spice Girls had this Beatlemania-esque fame that, again, if you're my age and above, you'd remember how famous the Spice Girls were. And suddenly this footballer at the biggest club in the world was dating one of the Spice. It was ridiculous. And his downfall at the club was that. That's why I feel like he wanted rid of him. But as a football player, brilliant. You know, come very close to winning a Ballon d'Or. And his season where we won the treble, to come back after being sent off for England, and the no football player at stadiums has suffered the level of volatility and toxicity that he did. That go into those games, the boos, the noise was just ridiculous. And it was every single game for a year, home and away, everybody booed him. You know, there was mannequins, people being hung outside his house. Like, that's a madness. And he overcame that and had one of the greatest seasons for an English player ever in the Premier League. So yeah, I'd put him in top class myself. I think he's a top class player. Not quite Hall of Fame. I didn't stay here long enough. But yeah, top class.
Terry, are you
Yeah, of
serious?
course he
You
was.
wouldn't put him in Hall of
Ballon d'Or as
Fame?
well.
I wouldn't put him in Hall of Famer. We can only have up to 5 people in there, and I think there are 5 other people that have done more. Again, Beckham, like one of the things that Beckham did as a football player, that if we were doing across all things, he's done something not to the same degree as Cristiano Ronaldo, but he did very, very well. Like Real Madrid, they know how unforgiving Real Madrid fans are. They loved him.
Yeah.
He then went and played in America and then came back. Went and did some bits at AC Milan. They loved him as a footballer. Then went and even played a bit for Paris Saint-Germain and they loved him. Guy went to 3 different countries in Europe and each fan base loved what he did on the football pitch. That's why when I hear people say he's overrated, he weren't that good. It's like, yeah, bruv, like how many English players have actually played in other countries and been accepted by all those nations' football fans for how good they were? Not very many. So yeah, overall footballer, Hall of Famer,
I think
Premier League top class.
Do you know what, Terry? I think the only thing that lets David Beckham down from not being like amongst GOAT level is pace, because his intelligence was incredible. Like if we were going to make let's say like a football manager playing card, intelligence 20, passing 20, crossing 20. Do you know what I mean? Like all of those things are all part of David Beckham and what he is, but he lacks so much pace. And I think if he had that, along with every other attribute that he has, we'll be talking about him as being one of his best ever England players. I
think it's a really good point. What I would say though, so I've got an affinity with players with no pace. So Teddy Sheringham was one of my favorites. When you have no pace, but you can compete for 15 years at the highest level and you ball, there's something very special about having no pace as an attacking player and still dominating games, because you are relying purely on your technical ability. Of course, and the thing is, if he'd have had pace, he may not have worked so hard on his crossing. He may not have worked so hard on his passing, because you don't need it as much. Trust me, if Theo Walcott was a few seconds per 100 meters slower, he'd have been a better football player, because he'd have had to have worked on that. And Beckham's era of footballer, again, you kids don't remember this. If you weren't fast, you were just stuck at the back. Like you had to be really quick to play out front or play on the wings. If you didn't have speed, it was like, that's why like we have been so behind our European counterparts of football for so many years, because it was like, oh, he's technically really good, but he ain't got that much speed. We'll stick him at the back. Oh yeah, James is the fastest kid in the team. He goes up front, then we'll just knock it over the top and he runs onto it. That's how football was. And that's why Beckham for me is so special, because he didn't have pace and he was still one of the best players in the world.
That's an interesting one anyway. Look, all I'll say is there is a player in the Premier League who lacks all sorts of pace and was disrespected by a number of fans till the Ballon d'Or was very, very close to his trophy cabinet. So we'll keep that one on the wraps anyway.
Who's that?
I'll leave it to the guys at home. They know who I'm talking about. You know, so let's carry on.
Who?
You can't sit there for like 5 minutes while Terry's talking like this.
No. You know what? I want to see if anyone can guess.
Vibes, isn't it? Like he's just like.
I want to see if anyone can guess. There's a player.
I'm lost.
Yeah,
please don't tell me you're talking about
Jorginho.
Probably the smartest player.
Okay, bro, but you're putting that face to me saying it. You know how much I rate J5.
It's in general. So your point, it's not directly to you. It's a point where there are a lot of people who would agree with you by saying they love the fact that David Beckham didn't have pace, but were the same people who disrespected Jorginho for not having pace.
It's like anything, right? If you think about Michael Carrick, no pace but dominated. Bergkamp, exactly. Slow.
Gareth Barry.
Gareth Barry, an echelon down, but
Gareth Barry, you know.
Players like that are special, though. The thing is, the reason why people like fast players is because it is more. We'll get onto it later. When you're more exciting, you're more desirable. But there's something about, like, Teddy Sheringham was one of my favorite players growing up. That I don't think he was as good. He wasn't as good as Dennis Bergkamp was, but he was a version of that type of player. Dimitar Berbatov, by the way, is actually quite quick when he wanted to run. Like, he could run. That's the maddest bit about him, but he chose not to. But there we go. That's where I put David Beckham. Tom, you're up next with your next pick, mate. And I'm going to give you, this time round, you're getting Marc Overmars.
Oh.
Oh, do you know what? You're a bit too young for Marc Overmars. That isn't fair.
For
So I'm going to
goodness
give
sake.
you. I'm going to so.
Like, you
So I'm
remember
going to
it.
give you. Yeah, you are. You are a bit too. I'm going to give you Riyad Mahrez. Riyad Mahrez.
You know what to do, Tom.
He goes into top class purely for what he done with Leicester. That story itself will pull certain players' legacies above one because it's that story. It's Leicester, and he was such an integral part. He won Player of the Year that year, and even when he went to City, and there was some question marks, will he be able to hack it at a bigger club than Leicester? He's been integral there as well. He's survived so many rounds of Pep roulette. It's unreal. I know he's out of favour now, but we still see his quality. He's top class for me. I just think on the ball he's brilliant. He's a very underrated finisher in the sense of you give him the ball on his left foot inside the box and more times than not it ends up in the bottom corner. I just think he's brilliant. And when Coutinho left and there was all them rumours out who were going to get to replace him, I wanted Mahrez in because he was brilliant and he still is.
Unbelievable player.
Does anybody think that he has underachieved individually at City, though? When you think how good he was at Leicester and the numbers he delivered there, not doing, why hasn't he delivered more in a much better team?
What's the problem is?
Go
No, go
ahead. Oh, all I was going to say is that, when you go into, and this might be the case with somebody like Grealish, a very creative player that's a free player. At Leicester, he had that kind of role. And in Pep's system, it's a lot more systemized. It's a lot more structural. And I think you take away a little bit of that freedom and you take away some of those goals and some of those. I mean, when you watch Mahrez at Leicester, it's a completely different player. The class is definitely still there, but he could pretty much run, the game on his own from that left pocket. And he doesn't do that for City. So I think it's a little bit of that. I think he's in the 60s for goals altogether. And when we get up to some of the other wingers that we're going to be talking about, they're closer to the hundreds. So he should probably be scoring more than that. But he's definitely, I think it's more about Pep's system than Mahrez himself, like Tom said.
I wish this was Twitter Spaces because I'll just be pressing that 100 continuously. Literally everything I just said, man. I'm literally pressing that 100 right now. Mahrez, I feel, is almost like one of the most disrespected wingers in the Premier League. The guy is incredible, and the thing is, the reason why he doesn't hit the numbers that everyone, because numbers are a thing nowadays for all the kids. So I'm too old for numbers of goals and assists, all that sort of thing there. But Mahrez doesn't get a run of games. If you look at other players that are playing for City, but all those players, all the talent that City have got in that front line, you can't be consistently, unless you are the main striker. Even Ferran Torres, I would say, is arguably their best striker, even though he is a false nine. But even he isn't starting week in, week out. So therefore, it's almost impossible to get the numbers that we want to see because you're not able to play the amount of games that you want.
I understand that argument. I do understand.
That's on Mahrez, though. That's not on Pep or the City system. Because if Mahrez produced consistently, he would start every single game. That's how Pep Guardiola moves. Kevin De Bruyne can come back from a 2-week injury, 3-week injury, and start immediately. Every single player who is consistent and plays the same level week in, week out, he starts for Pep Guardiola. So that's on Mahrez. That's not on anyone else. It's on Mahrez that Foden is getting starts ahead of him and other players are getting starts ahead of him. I think he's massively underachieved ever since leaving Leicester. That's something people are not looking at. He was an integral part of what Leicester did, but I would argue, and I will argue, that Kante and Vardy were probably more important to that team than Mahrez was. That's number one. The second thing is with Mahrez, I think with the consistency element, he's completely inconsistent as a winger. He'd have a run of games where he's phenomenal to watch and he scores amazing goals and stuff. But then you'd have a run of games where he dribble, and then does nothing with the ball, for 4 or 5 games in a row. So it's who he reminds me of? He reminds me of James Harden, if you ever watched the NBA, but without the numbers. He just hogs the ball on that wing position. How many times have we watched Man City and there's a ball, clear ball for Mahrez to play, but he just decides to, do the whole I'm Ronaldinho thing and eventually just mess the entire chance up. So definitely extremely underachieved after leaving Leicester. So
Hassan,
I
can't
wouldn't
think-
say top class
Your
at all.
example of Kevin De Bruyne doesn't fit because he's an echelon above everybody else in that team. Like they have a bunch of top players, but Kevin De Bruyne is special to that particular system. Everybody else is interchangeable. Every other player, except for Kevin De Bruyne, is interchangeable in that team.
That's not true.
I don't think because Kevin De Bruyne never gets taken out, that means that Mahrez is super inconsistent. I would say
I use De Bruyne as an example, but there are other players on the pitch who are consistent, who always start for
No,
Pep
they
Guardiola.
always switch. Like
Rodri always starts. Ever since he's
No,
become
doesn't.
consistent, he's always starting. Cancelo, Walker, Diaz is always starting.
Cancelo
Laporte is
doesn't
always
start
starting.
every game.
Ederson always starts. There seven players.
Come on,
The
bro.
goalkeeper.
Come on. You
No,
know
no, no,
that
but
Mahrez
Is he
is
not a
interchangeable.
player on the football pitch? That's not on me. But anyway, look, even if you remove him, there's 6 players who I'd say 7 players who consistently start for Man City if fit. If fit, they consistently start.
What I would say that's away from that a bit though is I think Mahrez is good, but I kind of it's weird, isn't it? So it might be personal to me, so you don't need to take this as your thing. But there's a category of wingers, or there are a bunch of wingers that I just think is Mahrez and all those other wingers that we'd used to compare better than Son, because I think Son is in an unfortunate situation where I think he's actually one of the best wingers in the league as well, but he obviously, it's just a struggle to win things with Tottenham and whatnot. Maybe you can look and blame Son for that. But I think if you swap Son and Mahrez, I think Son starts pretty much. Like Son will be someone Pep uses in every single game.
I look at Mahrez. I would say on Mahrez, I wouldn't put him into top class. I would actually put him into. I would put him into overrated.
Overrated. Fact.
Yeah, because the technical ability and everything's there, and I'm one of these people. I do believe in numbers from attacking players, and numbers have always existed. I've done some research on this recently. Barring Zidane, who played in the modern era, but the majority of his games he started playing in the mid '80s, where assists weren't even counted. You look at all the players that in our younger days were like, he's class. We knew they were class because they scored and delivered on a regular. You didn't need to check that they'd scored because you saw them score. But they all have great numbers. They all have very good to great numbers. There isn't someone that you look at and go, oh, Gerd Muller was brilliant, but he didn't score goals. Do you know what I mean? Like, even I remember the biggest one was when Maradona passed away, and I was on a stream, and they were like, oh, that was before people cared about numbers. And then we sat there and looked at he played like 380 games in his career and had like 302 goal contributions. I'm like, all great attackers have good goal contributions. It's always been there, but Mahrez, for me, I agree. I think if he was more consistent, because when Raheem Sterling was scoring regularly, he very rarely got rotated. As soon as he stopped scoring, the rotation kind of kicked in that little bit more. But that's where he's been placed. We're going to go to Jess for her next pick in a minute. But George, who's also an Arsenal fan, has joined us now to come on the show and have his say as well. Welcome to the terrace, George. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Right. So, Jess, it's going to be your next pick. It's starting to get tough now. I'm going to give you Gareth Bale. Where would you place Gareth Bale in terms of all-time Premier League greatness as a winger or inside forward?
Why? Okay. I mean, he was pretty unplayable, wasn't he? I don't know. Why do you want to give me this one?
Because it's hard. Because he's a Spurs
player.
Don't make it easy here, you know.
Why are you doing this to me? Okay. Does anybody have like his stats up at the very least? Because all I remember is just feeling like he was very, very unplayable, very, very fast, crazy shot power. Like the guy was super, super good, wasn't he?
Did he do his best here though, Jess? Like he had an unplayable season. But the question becomes, did he really proceed and go to the next level, the Champions League with Real Madrid? Because there's no doubt the talent and in terms of his peak season.
He didn't win isn't he one of those? He's one of the ones that didn't win a Premier League. So he's a wild card, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, his time at Tottenham, in fairness, in his last season as a winger, he scored 21 goals, 26 in all competitions for a Spurs team, which is pretty good. Like only Ronaldo had broken that barrier previously to him.
And he was before
the failed fullback. That's what he is. Gareth
Yes.
Bale is a failed fullback.
Wait,
And
what?
like, look, end of the day, he
Oh
went
my
on-
God.
I'm coming with Hotspur vibes right now. I'm
Drop
coming
the
with Hotspur
Arsenal
vibes. I like business, right? This guy was going out on loan to Nottingham Forest, and then he was going to go out on loan to Birmingham City. In fact, he was going to get sold to Birmingham City. Gareth Bale was a flop. And then he had that wonderful game against Inter Milan. He had one good season, only one good season in the Premier
That's a
League.
lie.
And apart from
That's
that,
a lie.
That's not
That's
true,
cap.
mate.
that's a
That's
lie.
not true.
Okay,
That's
tell
not
me where
true.
tell me where I'm lying. He had one good season, and that season when he was in the Premier League, he was unplayable.
He
When he
didn't just have
finally
no.
got
This is
that
what,
on the wide
and
left,
this is my problem. I literally tweeted it today.
he was just a good player.
Ronaldo and Messi have ruined football. Ruined. Absolutely
No.
ruined football, bro.
I'm
The
too old
reason
for
why
that.
you're saying that, no, Gavin, bro.
People are trying to tell me that Dennis Bergkamp is a dead baller because he only got X amount of goals, X amount of assists.
Yeah, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. No. You don't have to do that. Just because people tell you that doesn't make it true, bro. Everyone who is knowledgeable about football or should be respected and have a respected opinion knows that Dennis Bergkamp wasn't a dead baller. Like everyone knows that. Cool, that's one. Gareth Bale 2. He didn't have just one season. He had 3 good seasons at Tottenham. It's just that he had one absolutely world-class season where he scored 21 and 30 or something like that. And the reason why we're looking at that one season is because it's the one that stands out numbers-wise.
Is 3 seasons enough, though? Because are we going to add longevity in there or anything like that? Because it's 3 seasons.
You can make, that's a better argument than saying
we should have put him over Son.
Are we talking about... That's why my question originally was: are we gauging based off their time in the Premier League or their overall career?
It's what they've done in their time in the Premier League, but there isn't any set criteria because everybody cries about that. Because we say longevity, it's like, yeah, but then my guy's going to lose. So people can make whatever argument they want. You know, his peak is in that season before he went to Real Madrid was one of the best individual seasons that a winger has had. And where it's unfair, the 2 seasons before that he was getting better, but he was like, that was when he was 21, 22, 23. That's your formative years as a football player. He hasn't even reached. He peaked in Spain, no doubt.
Let's act like he didn't come back as well.
And even when he came back as an old man with no hips, he still scored 16 goals for Tottenham. And
he played well
with no hips.
He didn't. When he came back, and you saw him run, as an older man myself, he made me feel pain watching him run. You could see. It was like, oh, bro, he needed a physio. He needed something. Them hips, you Americans won't know this, but there's a show over here called Last of the Summer Wine. It's about all these old people, and that's what it reminded me of. It looked painful. It really did.
I just can't believe Gab said all that for Gareth Bale when he'd probably be a top 3 Arsenal player in the Premier League era. He would be in your top 3, hands down.
Post Invincibles, no doubt. Post Invincibles, definitely. But Jess, where are you going to place him? Where are you going to place him? Where are you putting him on this tiering list? Where are you putting the man at?
Hall of Fame, just say it, Gab. Come on.
Hall of Fame, 3 seasons, 1 being unplayable.
Hall of Fame.
No, not Hall of Fame, because somebody else said Hall of Flame.
Hall of Flame.
Hall of Flame. But Mahrez is in top class, and now I'm thinking maybe we should knock him down. You put him in underrated, because I don't even think people would. If you had not put him on this list, I would have never thought about him. So put him in underrated.
Fair enough. Gav, we're going to you next for your next pick, brother. And we're getting down to some serious players now. Damien Duff.
Oh my God, Damien Duff he was so underrated, man. I love Damien Duff. I don't even business. I'll put it out there. I'll tell you what, if Damien Duff was called Definio, everyone would be banging on about it. Because he started balling out at Blackburn. He ends up going to Chelsea and he turned it on. He completely turned it on. Honestly, the guy, whether you played him left or right, if you played him on the right, he would cut inside on his left bag. He would find a man. Playing wide left, just twist up right backs. Underrated, man. I love Damien Duff for that business. Right, Terry, you're old like me. Yeah. Do you remember that song? That was bought for Damien Duff.
No, what was it?
Those Irish rappers.
No, I never saw it.
Right, I will try and find it, and I'll tweet it.
Send me it, brother, and I'll have a listen. Do you know what? If there's one nationality of player that gets underrated more than an Englishman, it's an Irishman. There is
Irishman,
again, it's
100%.
something Irish. It's merit. Like they just don't get the respect. Like Roy Keane's one of the greatest midfielders ever. People just think he was a thug now. It's crazy. Like they don't respect the balling ability. And Damien Duff was an absolute player.
Didn't
And
you see what
Well done.
Packer Richards did on the weekend, where he was talking about how Vieira is his favorite player, right next to Roy Keane? I thought that was
Oh man.
quality. Right, Husim, to you next, and I'm giving you Alexis Sanchez.
Oh, why do you have to give me him? I wanted someone else so bad, bro. I wanted, I wish I would get him. But anyway, look, Alexis Sanchez, he had a great time at Arsenal, and he was definitely in the top 2 wingers in the league at the time. But then I can't ignore his time at United. Like, you genuinely cannot ignore that. Like, that's a massive part of the career as well. So we can't just brush that to the side. Then he last, like, was it a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken, at Man United? He moved in January.
Far too long. I will add. Far too long is how long he was there.
Yeah, I think if he stayed at Arsenal, and exactly what Jess said earlier, like he would have probably worked his way into being an Arsenal legend even throughout everything, because he would have obviously still delivered consistently for them and stuff. I think with Alexis Sanchez, because of his time at Man United and the way he played over there, I would say he probably drops a level, because if he stayed in Arsenal, I think this entire conversation would be different. So I'd say Sanchez is top class and definitely not a Hall of Famer.
I think top class is a fair judgment, to be fair. He was
he has a little bit of the Nazaries about him.
I told Terry I'm unbiased, but you see, this is what he is. It's just
what's interesting about the 3 years at Arsenal: 25, 17, and 30 goals in all competitions. In again, and I'm not trying to throw smoke here, like an average Arsenal team, he was doing that in. It wasn't one of Wenger's peak teams. It was a team that was struggling, and he was killing it. But his drop off as a football player in general, since moving to Man United, like he hasn't picked it up even at Inter Milan. Like he done nothing. It's mad where the drop off just came. I don't know what it was.
I think you find this with ballers that start very early in a sense. I mean, like when you look at your Wayne Rooney's and those that had started really quite early, you look at Alexis Sanchez, he was really good in Udinese. He had a very strong spell at Barcelona, but never exploded, I would say, to the star quality that he did at Arsenal. I think Arsenal was his best peak season if you're looking at him individually, but he started quite young and moved across many leagues really early. And I find
his last year at Barcelona was world class. I think he scored like 25.
It was good. It was great.
Goals, yeah.
I still think, though, he was sharing the goals there. Like, he never got the individual freedom that he got at Arsenal to really have the attack run through him. And, as a result, his peak awards came at Arsenal.
I think the Rooney shout's great, because I always remember listening to Henry when he first started doing punditry, talking about Wayne Rooney, and he said Wayne Rooney's biggest hindrance was he worked too hard, as in he chased every ball down, he ran around. Like, my view, most athletes, and like, I know I grew up in the fighting game, and I know a lot of fighters, there's a certain amount of rounds you've got in you. So if you fight too much too early, or you give too much, you burn out. So it's every now and then, like you get a Maldini, you get a Ryan Giggs, you get a Paul Scholes that can compete at a top level till they're 38. That stuff is rocking horse shit. Like, that doesn't exist. Alexis Sanchez, every game I saw him play for Arsenal, when he played 166 games, that guy worked his ass into the ground. He hit about 28, and his body just said,
Terry, he also did extra practices when he didn't need to. He did extra training after training. And I mean, you love that stuff, but it was too much, and so, yeah.
Ozil did similar. If you look at Ozil's career when he started at Werder Bremen, and really when he exploded kind of, on the world stage, and then when he went to Real Madrid, he went very early. I think if you do start as a footballer and you peak quite early, there's really that fear. Can it translate?
It's so true. Go on, Gav.
I was going to say, like with Suarez as well. I'm not a stats merchant. I'm not into that sort of thing. But even that lead up to the January transfer window when he left, still scored like 12 goals or so for Arsenal. Still got nearly double digits in the assists, and he clearly didn't want to be at Arsenal anymore. But he still put in the work. So as far as I'm concerned, that tells me a professional there. He didn't want to be there, but still put in the work and still made things happen.
I think when all these stories about these players that burned out quite young, that's why I have so much respect for the term of longevity. As in, if you're in your mid to late 30s and you're still performing at a good level in the hardest leagues in the world, the level of respect that it's the way you take care of yourself. Well, I was watching. I don't watch that much of Messi because I openly profess I don't watch a great deal of European football. I've watched 3 PSG games though. When he ain't doing anything, he just walks around. But he's reserving his energy. He can't run around like he used to. If Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi run around the pitch like they're 25, they've got to be taken off after 50 minutes. They're too old. Like I'm 35 and I'm not that fit. I'm fit enough. But it's like there's certain things I can't do at 35 now. Like I went back to my old fighting gym maybe like 2 years ago, and I was just training. And they were like, "Oh, do you want to get in the ring and spar with some of the up and coming guys?" And I couldn't bring myself to do it because they'd kick my head off. But the problem is, by watching them, they weren't at the level I was at when I was. And I'm like, I ain't getting beat up by someone that was worse than me like now. But because of my age, they kick my head in. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing it. And that's why you've got to walk around the pitch a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah. So he's been put in the top class. Viewers, what do you think? Make sure you're smashing that like button for us. We're getting down to the tough ones, man. Like Chesney's here with us now. What are you saying, Ches? And look at it's the first time we've ever had Ches on without a crackly line. I can't believe it. 18 months in, and there's no crackle, bruv. No crackle.
I haven't been quit out the stream. I'm here. I made it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're here, bro. Right. So, George, your first pick of the night. Oh, God, it's so hard now. And I'm gonna give you an Arsenal player. I'm gonna give you Robert Pires.
Oh God. Okay, because there's a lot of debate with him about where he can go. For me, he's got to go in the category of Hall of Famer. You're looking at a player right now that was probably in one of the best teams, arguably, in terms of the Premier League. You're looking at the season that he won, his Player of the Year, who he competed with, Henry and Shearer, in terms of peak seasons. He's up there. And in terms of consistency, I think he was criminally underrated in terms of how people looked at him. I feel as though when we talk about Pires, I think the Giggs debate happens because of what Troops has said in the past in terms of comparing the two. And for me, I feel as though you're looking at a guy that's got more Premier League goals and assists in his time. You're looking at a guy that has had a higher peak, in my opinion, but longevity and in terms of having a great career, that's where maybe his argument falls in compared to other teams. Because while he won great amount of trophies, I don't think he had consistency more than 4 or 5 seasons in terms of the very, very top. So it's very tough for me. I feel he has to go to Hall of Famer because he's had more than 3 top class seasons. He's won excellent amount of trophies, and he's part of a team that's done something that no one else has done. So if you're looking at criteria for me, he's won trophies, he's been part of history in the Premier League, and his peak seasons are up there with amongst the greatest kind of there. So he's got to be in a Hall of Famer.
He also doesn't have speed. He also doesn't have speed. And remember, that was an argument for somebody else, that intelligence and no speed. So yeah.
No one's taken a shot yet, Jess. You're a little bit premature.
No. I was making sure I got that one in there too.
Do you know what? Robert Pires as well. I was looking at this last year. Nothing to do with a debate. It was looking at Rashford's goal return as a wide player. And Robert Pires was the first player in Premier League history to break. He scored the highest. He scored 14 goals 3 years running. No wide player in Premier League history had ever scored over 14 goals, like more than 12 goals, I think, in a Premier League campaign until he did it. Which is also why now when you see a wide player get 20 goals in a season and people go, it's not enough. It's like, you're fucking stupid. Like, you don't realize that for wide players, it's 14. That's why when, like 3 years later, when Ronaldo suddenly scored 44. That's why it was so special, because like 14 was the highest anybody had ever done before from that position. But he was brilliant. But as you say, I suppose what you have to go into that in terms of looking at that next echelon is how long he did it. What did he do in Europe compared to maybe some of the others? But from who's a hater of Arsenal here? So we go to Chelsea. Okay, go on. Hussein wants to say something here. Go on. What are you saying?
Listen, I hate Man United, but I would not be able to sleep today if Beckham is in a tier below Robert Pires. That's just wrong. That's completely wrong. That's unacceptable. Robert Pires is maximum top class. Let's just say it as it is. Let's not put him in the upper echelon of wingers. I think plenty of wingers in the modern era have overtaken him. I could literally make an argument for Mane overtaking Robert Pires. Like, never mind Salah and Hazard and these players. So listen, Beckham. If Beckham is in the top class category, Robert Pires categorically cannot be. in the Hall of Fame because David Beckham was literally top assist provider, I think, 4 years, second Ballon d'Or, like literally an iconic footballer. And he cannot be a tier above Beckham. That's just
He
wrong.
doesn't beat his
Perez
three
won-
most consistent
Perez won-
seasons. When you look
Perez
at
won
output,
the Writers Association
Robert Perez
award
has
as
a
well.
higher goal and assist contribution output at their
Bro,
peak. for
David
the
Beckham
most-
played in a 4-4-2 as a right
Doesn't-
midfielder.
Arsenal
That's
played in
not
the
the
point of
game.
it.
Perez played as the
Modern
left
football.
wing. He played as a left
That's
midfielder. We all
different.
played in a
It's
4-4-2 back then.
You're
we
not
all
really
played in
making a
4-4-2
point,
back
mate. I'm
then.
sorry.
It's
Perez
different.
also
It's
won the
different.
Football
Man
Writers
United were a
Association.
crossing team, or more of a crossing team, playing like through the
Arsenal-
wing, like
Okay,
crossing
okay.
the for the two
So he
strikers.
gets more credit
No,
because the
Hassan, you're
team is more
losing, man.
crossing in preference,
Yeah,
but
come
the
on.
goal
Move
and
Beckham
assist
up then.
contributions
You gotta move Beckham up there.
are less. Come on.
We have to move Beckham up and Perez down because Perez is not
Okay.
top 5 wingers in Premier League history. That's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Neither is
Is
Beckham.
no one else seeing the
Neither is
problem with this?
Beckham.
Is it just me?
I don't think you're making a
Neither is
point
Beckham,
here.
though.
Do you know what? I personally don't. I think they're about on par with each other. I would put Robert Perez into top. When I'm looking at who else is left, that's the problem for me. But we'll get to that later. Remember, we get a trump card at the end. The viewers with their super chats can move people around later on in the show as well. Daniel, your next pick, and this is, with the amount of people in here now, it's probably going to be your final pick, Daniel. And I'm giving you. It's so hard. I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna give you Eden Hazard.
Come
Oh,
on.
that's
It's
not
Hall of
fair.
Fame, man.
That's not fair, Terry.
Why is that
Hall
not
of Fame.
fair?
You should have given it
Unless
to a
unless you give me
rival,
Salah, then that's not
That's
fair.
an easy one, man. That's an easy one.
So we
That's
can
The
get
Hall
a-
of Fame, that's easy.
a balanced opinion here. No, go ahead.
It's not balanced. What do you mean by a balanced opinion? What more do you need? I know it's a bit of a tug of war, but we don't need to do the Hazard debate every stream, do we? He's a Hall
I've
of Fame.
never done one before, so I'm interested. Let's.
Oh, you've
see
never
what's
done
going
one?
on. I've never.
Yeah, I mean, if Hazard was alive now, they'd probably give him the captain's armband at Arsenal. To be fair, he deserves it anyway. So, yeah,
He's not old
Hazard,
enough to join
If
us,
we're
bro,
putting
yet.
Hazard in the Hall of Fame category and not Perez, I have a serious problem with that.
Hazard
Like I can
Hazard,
accept it.
Hazard's peak in the Premier League is ×2 of Robert Perez, bro.
How is his peak ×2?
That's fact. That's fact. What Daniel just said is fact.
That is-
Well, let
We're
Daniel
talking-
have
we're
his.
talking about their 10 years in the Premier League, and Hazard
Yes, I'm
is-
backing you up. You guys have 4 Arsenal fans on the panel. I'm gonna back Daniel up on the point he said. Hazard
like,
is
what-
level
what-
above
what
I
are
do
you
Perez.
that just
determining
because
as your
there's
peak?
Arsenal fans on here.
Are you determining goal and assist contributions in his most productive seasons?
Yeah, but you can
Or-
talk about his stats, but Hazard wasn't someone who needed to provide statistical output. As I break down every single time on every single stream that we have the argument, you're never going to agree with me, but I will enlighten you on the tactics that we played. Hazard was someone who could impact the game without getting a goal or assist. He'd win the man of the match in a number of games for Chelsea. I believe he even has, I might be wrong, but I think he might be top 3 in man of the matches in the Premier League. I could be wrong with that, but he has an extremely high number of man of the matches, and that's without in-game scoring or assisting. When you talk about clutch
And he
moments,
used to get a lot of second assists. The pass.
yeah,
the pass.
previous, of
Yeah,
course.
that's an
he,
influence
he
in
was
the
like
game.
our creative hub. He sparked everything. He started things off. If you want to talk about clutch moments, he has that. If you want to talk about a performer against he has, bro. just think about this now, and I could tell you now for free. A number of wingers don't have this. He has an iconic goal or moment against every big 6 side. Against Tottenham, against Arsenal, against United, against Man City. He has an iconic match goal moment against all of those top sides.
Salah has that as well, by the way.
He cleaned the Premier League. I can
How
say
many
he
Prem
cleaned
did
it
Salah
out.
got?
He did. He blew his nose with the Premier League, and then obviously
Don't
if
even
you want
try
to
denying
talk
it.
about,
Just a question.
pardon? We're not talking about Salah right now. We're talking about Eden
Daniel,
Hazard.
I'm backing you up. Keep going. I'm backing you up.
We're talking about Hazard, Eden Hazard. He was a Hazard. Like there wasn't a warning time before every game because you knew he was about to dump. But nah, man, Eden Hazard, man, bro, brought a smile to people's faces. And I think, do you know what? Let me be honest. I honestly believe rival fans loved him too. But because of the sake of debate, he was one of those guys who was likable. He had that David Beckham trait. You just loved him when he played. But
Do you know what?
because
Do you know what I say
now
about
because now we have to debate and
Do you know
be angry.
do you know what's interesting about Eden Hazard for me is people have always gone for me like I have an issue with him as a player. I don't. My issue was how he was used to disrespect other people. So have Hope's famous example of Messi's here, Hazard's here, Cristiano Ronaldo's below the floor. Like people would overplay, and I used to call him overrated, not from how good he was, but the way people spoke about Eden Hazard, he's on par with Messi, Ronaldo. He's in their group. He's in their tier. And I was like, no, he's like he's peaking the Prem. He was there with the Alexis Sanchez's, Gareth Bale level of players, and he was doing great things with those guys. What frustrated me is that people wanted to put him on the tier up, and I was like, you need more output, more trophies, more consistency to be on that next level. That's what I felt was disrespect. He had the ability for it as well. And what wound me up about him is he has no desire to be that good. You can tell that by the beer belly after, in pre-seasons and the man boobs and everything else that comes with it. And that's not an attack at his ability. That was, when I see talented people not fulfill 100% their talent, it just bothers me. One of them things for me is an injury. He could have been better than he was.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I think the rebuttal to that, and it might not necessarily be a direct rebuttal, but I think it's more of a case of, we don't always have to, because you have to look at how good he was even without trying. And that is something that I look at as well.
And I do, but I suppose my view on it is this. They're paid their weight. For me, we'll get onto other players later, but I want everyone who wears my club shirt as an example to give 100% for me. Eden Hazard, as great as he was, he didn't give 100% for any of the fans that he played for. And I get that he was still great.
I disagree.
But it can't be if you just agreed that he didn't take care of himself and didn't always train hard and didn't try and be he could have been the best player in the world. If he could have been the best player in the world, but he didn't work. You've said it before on here. I think it might have been you. Might have been another Chelsea fan. He openly admitted didn't work hard enough in training. He didn't want to be the best player in the world.
Can I ask you this question?
Go on.
So do you think Ronaldinho gave the fans his money's worth?
In terms of entertainment, he did in terms of entertainment. Hang on. Let me answer the question. He did in terms of entertainment, but if he hadn't have, like the beers and the bad food, he could have gone on for longer. And my point is, I'm not saying that takes away from his brilliance or his genius as a football player, but when you're talking about greatest ever, someone who dedicates themselves to the art of football and maintains their body, gets to the very best that they can be, there's an element of me that respects that, and it is an elevator because you've had to strive to get there. The crazy thing about Eden Hazard is, as brilliant as he was, he's still underachieved as a footballer. And that, for me, is something that bothers me about him. And then when people say Messi, Ronaldo level, I don't like it because those two men, as talented as they were, the work they've had to put in to get to that level, Hazard doesn't deserve to be spoken about in the same echelon as them because he hasn't put the work in. He doesn't deserve the same level of credit that those guys have done. But that isn't. But you know what it's like now? The world is so hyperbolic. They hear me. Who put that meme into the group chat the other day where it was like, I love mangoes more than oranges, and there was this angry face that was then like, how dare you not speak about pineapples? That's the problem when you say what I've just said about Hazard. People's brains say Terry says Hazard was shit. Never left my mouth.
So if he doesn't achieve based on his ability, so we know that he could have been a lot better, but he's still better than most wingers that performed as good as they can. Does that matter though? I guess that's my thing. It's can you put him, because we're comparing one against another, really, or we're comparing what they could have done.
So what I would say on that is this: you guys spoke the other day about Henry being the GOAT, and you spoke about the inspiration and the adulation and the love and the way he made you feel. I'm talking subjectively here. The way I respect a player, the way a player makes me feel, who I know has dedicated himself 100% to make sure he's at his best for my team, that fills me with a different kind of emotion to someone who's like, I love what he does, but he could work a little bit harder, couldn't he? So it's an emotional, subjective thing for me. That doesn't mean he can't be the best in the Premier League ever. I'm talking about when people, as I said, my frustration was when people were putting him on the Messi, Ronaldo level. I didn't mention anything about not being one of the greatest in the Premier League. So let's not twist those two things up. I feel disappointed in Hazard because he could have been better. I felt disappointed in Ronaldinho because he could. I know some people still say he was the best, but there are people that look at peaks. I look at Ronaldinho and think you could have done so much more. But then he loved the beer and that, and that's his personal choice. But equally, it's not a preference thing for me. But that's it. I like hard workers. I suppose that's my take on it. It's not a diss at any of them. Actually, I'll give Chez a pick. I'm going to give Chez a pick next as we move forward here. And we put him in Hall of Famer. So, Chez, I'm going to give you... I can't give you any of the older guys because you're too young. You're too young. So, I'm going to give you Raheem Sterling.
Oh, can I see the tier list? Thingy.
Yes, bro. Yes, bro.
I have no idea. Oh, Raheem Sterling, my Jamaican brother.
Unranked.
This is a tough one, because he's contributed his Liverpool days, obviously recently in Man City, fallen off a bit, contributed heavily to the title wins as well. Obviously, you think about was it Southampton clutch goal? That last minute winner. That's one example of when he's turned up in the big games. No one can say that about him. Is he overrated? No.
He's turned up in the big games. Did you just say that about Raheem Sterling?
I saw it one game. He doesn't do it enough. That's my point. That's my point.
What?
But
Hey, let's stop happening right now, please. Raheem Sterling has some of Man City. He has big goals for Man City, big goals for Liverpool. He has big
over
goals
a long period of time. Over a long period of time.
This time, you're saying he doesn't turn up? What?
In the big
I'm
games,
just saying,
no.
not to the extent of being overrated. That's my point. So I think he's can I say it again? I think he's in the middle of them two. There's one.
All I'm saying is he's better than mine.
I'm gonna say top class because
only
because the Liverpool season, that was a mad season. All his Liverpool days. City's gone to City. He's won Prems. He's contributed to his team. The only reason why he wouldn't go above or wouldn't go overrated is because obviously his consistency is a bit off, and obviously recently as well he hasn't been performing to levels you expect him to. So because of that,
but he's been mad efficient at Man City. When you look at his transition from Liverpool and his Liverpool days and what he's done at Man City, he's become far more efficient as a player, and he's contributed to their success massively. So Raheem Sterling is really underrated for me.
That's the thing. Is he that level of player in the Premier?
No, he's top class. He's definitely top class.
He's top class. He's done it for multiple seasons.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that's enough to push him up the next.
And he's part of one of the best EPL teams in terms of the Centurions.
Would
he
you
was
say
a massive part of
Man City would have won the league?
Well, I don't know. He scored 23, 25, and 30 goals,
Exactly.
3 seasons running.
He's mad efficient.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't think they would have done as well without him. Equally, he's had a bad 12 months. But actually, if you look at all the players we've mentioned so far, Hazard had a 1 year where he was dead. Like most players do. Again, Messi and Ronaldo should never be the barometers for consistency and outputs. All players have a year or two where they weren't at their very best. But
he's really disrespected to me.
I'm happy for Raheem to be in top class. I look at him like someone I would actually put into underrated. I don't think Raheem Sterling gets any, and I do blame Liverpool for this because the way.
Here we go.
No, this isn't not even cap, bruv. Like everyone attacks the media for the way they have portrayed Raheem, and they've stopped doing it in the last couple of years because of him speaking out and the way fans have backed him. But all the stuff that came Raheem Sterling's way was because of what the Liverpool fan base, Liverpool journalists, Liverpool pundits, ex-Liverpool players painted him as. They painted him as excuse my language, as a greedy son of a bitch who was only leaving Liverpool for money and not to further his career. That's essentially how he was being discussed and treated and everything else. That is how he was portrayed, and it stuck with him. And then everybody just every milestone he's achieved, it's it's only because he's a system player. Well, if everybody could score goals like Raheem has done in Pep's system, then everybody would be scoring that level of goals, and they don't. And since he's gone off the boil with goals, they're not scoring as many in games where they should be, especially without Aguero. I think Raheem Sterling, for me, Hall of Fame might be too early, but then you haven't said that, right? You say that. He's won 3 Premier Leagues. So he's won more Premier Leagues than Robert Pires, I want to say. He's won an FA Cup. He's won 4 League Cups, right? Yes, he has no Champions League winners medal, but neither does Eden Hazard or Robert Pires in the Premier League era. His goal contributions and assist levels surpass them both, I believe, in that kind of in terms of peak seasons. So if Eden Hazard and Robert Pires are Hall of Famers or contenders for the Hall of Fame, Raheem Sterling has to be.
Exactly. Yeah, he should be.
No. I think he definitely, when it's all said and done, will be a contender. I think one of the things that you do factor in with a guy like Eden Hazard is I think Sterling didn't carry his team. Yes, his goal output is there. Of course, we understand how many goals, and he probably finished as the top goal scorer in one of the seasons for Man City. But then there was also a lot of other output around him. Like it wasn't like it was just him, like the sole goal scorer for his team. I think
Does he need to be though?
No.
He's a
You might
huge...
have. Yeah, I was gonna say you might have an argument as to why you might think that isn't relevant, but I think a lot of weight will be put on guys who had to carry their teams and had to inspire their teams to greater performances when Sterling had
It elevates them more.
Not his fault.
Is there a level of nostalgia that goes into this, guys, though? Because if you're talking pure output, I've always defended Raheem Sterling for being mad underrated, in my opinion. And I think we look back at some of these players with a little bit of nostalgia, a.k.a. Perez, even Hazard, some of the older players. Because if you're looking at pure output, trophy count, and his impact leaving on the Premier League, he's got to be up there. The guy's got, what, 302 or 203 goal and assists and 302
He's also
games.
only 27 as well, which is some of these players, they end and they're like 32, 33. Like he really, I mean, I think he'll end up leaving Man City.
He's performed
anyway,
internationally in Europe.
One of my biggest issues, and
nostalgia does matter though. Isn't that what we're to these arguments? How it makes you feel. Go on, Dan, go on.
No, I was just quickly saying, basically, I alluded to it earlier, but one of the biggest issues I have with just solely focusing on output is the goal scoring winger only became a thing in recent years. Like a lot of the wingers, that's why Giggs is rated so highly. Like, is one of the best wingers. Like, yeah, he had a lot of output in terms of his assists, but he never really was a goal scoring. Like, it wasn't like numbers that blew your mind, but you could still understand that he was one of the best wingers. So for me, when you look at these outputs in terms of what wingers are getting, like, let's not say that every single winger in Premier League history was required to score the same amount of goals.
They're not, but I think what's important, and we discussed this the other day, it's hard to compare eras. So what you have to do is, what were they delivering for that role within that era? Because you know, it's what Giggs and Perez had to do in their era was different to what Raheem Sterling and Mo Salah have to do now, but it's still comparable. Are they delivering on point? Are they exceeding expectations, or whatever it may be? It is still comparable. I just think Raheem Sterling, I think it's a Man City thing as well. Every Man City player that ever goes into these debates, they just get disregarded like there's something wrong with them. Maybe it's because they don't have enough fans behind them, backing them.
It's a legacy issue with nostalgia, in my opinion.
Yeah,
really
I hear that completely. I mean, look, he's been put into top class. We all get a trump card at the end that we can use. We're getting down to the last 5 people now, so I need to be very specific on who I give these people out to, because there's 8 of us. So Jess, I'm coming to you. Actually, I'm not going to give that one to Jess because, again, you're too. No, you're not too young for this one. You're not. I forgot how old you were. Don't let Jess.
25, and I'll always be 25.
Plus VAT. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jesus Christ. Jess, Marc Overmars.
Okay, here we go. This one's a difficult one for me because I love him so much, but he only had like 30-something goals and 30-something assists for Arsenal. Actually, yeah, like 30, 36 and 31. And although I think he was very talented, very special player, Robert Pires doubled that. And he also was more of a journeyman, in my opinion. He played for Ajax and Barcelona and Arsenal. And so it's kind of like one of those where you can mention him as somebody that was one of the best wingers of his time and all of that. The output was probably a little bit different. Oh, I hate to put him. George, am I wrong for putting him in unranked? I think
that's harsh for sure in terms of unranked, because, you know, he's had some good seasons. And like you said, he was considered among the best of his time, but he hasn't had the output where, very similar to a Sanchez or others who did great things in the moment, he didn't have the longevity in the Premier League. And he was a very different type of winger. So I would absolutely put him in top class, but I don't think, you know, he was a special in terms of the upper echelons.
When you say top, I'm just thinking top players have that output to back them up. And there's not like a tier below. And I just feel like I'm looking at him and I'm like, there's no, and he's not really, he's not really overrated either.
He's not over or underrated. He wasn't at Arsenal for long enough to be putting him in a category. So by putting him in unranked, I think is a fair point. because he did come clutch at points. He won the title at Old
Yeah.
Trafford pretty much,
Yeah.
you know, so that was a massive thing as well. He scored a lot of decent goals. He got involved in the FA Cup, won a double with Arsenal, but it wasn't at Arsenal for long enough for us to be having that conversation. If he stayed for two seasons more, maybe we could then be putting him in that top class bracket. But to be at Arsenal for 2.5 seasons, it's just not long enough to be.
It just
putting him
seems
in
harsh
that
to me,
upper
but like,
echelon.
I
I get
understand.
that as well, George. I get that so
Yeah.
much because like he was integral to us, like
Exactly.
of where we were going and what we were trying to achieve. Because when Wenger first came in at Arsenal, we had a lot of the old guard, and he was trying to get involved in the new things. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
It was a bridge
there
to
was-
what we were going
it
to.
was a
Really,
bridge to where we were heading to at that time, but he didn't cross that bridge and walk into the future promised land. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he got to the end and was like, "Now I'm going back," and then just went off
I
elsewhere.
can't put him in top just because of that. Like, if I'm being fair, like if somebody else brought out an
he doesn't have
Overmars
3
type of
seasons.
player-
I guess that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like in my
Yeah.
opinion, you have to at least have 3 seasons of top output and also contributing to trophies. And he did have 2
Yeah.
great seasons, but if he wasn't there, it just seems harsh to me.
I didn't realize he was only there. Do you know what? I just thought he was there for years. I
No.
hated him. I hated
It's
him
because of how
was
good
so
he was.
good.
He was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good. Yeah.
But it's memories, like my memories of him going down that left-hand side. I feel like he always was tearing up Gary Neville. He obviously didn't. It was probably once or twice, but
It was
they
elite
pain
for
me.
those 2 seasons. That's the problem, and I just
Yeah.
think he carried it on. So maybe unfair. I wanted to make the argument. I feel harsh putting him there
So
only
you
because
put
he
him-
was.
has he been putting unranked?
Yeah.
There we
Probably.
go.
Yeah.
Husim, I'm giving you your final pick. You can have actually you wanted David Ginola, right?
Or Salah, whatever you want.
No,
I can
you
see-
get Ginola.
I'm gonna give you David Ginola. I'm giving you David Ginola.
Listen, I wish I got Mo Salah and put him in the GOAT thing. But anyway, look, when it comes to Ginola, I wish there was a category called The Streets Won't Forget, because this man is just like, honestly speaking, David Ginola, I think it would be fair to say, was probably the first saucy footballer of the Premier League era. Like, this man, like, brought a totally different dimension. It's just like this man, like,
stop the cap.
what?
No, he was brilliant, but you're acting like Eric Cantona didn't play here. Come on, bro.
Hossam, carry on
You
with that.
okay? You had
Ginola
me
loving.
there, but obviously I'm not as old as you. I'm a bit younger, so I probably didn't see Cantona as much. But I did see Ginola for a bit, for just a bit. But when it comes to Ginola, listen, okay, you're right. But Cantona was probably the first saucy footballer, but the second saucy footballer in Premier League era was probably David Ginola. I really like him. I think he made the team of the year twice. This guy is just like, I don't know where to put him, because these guys have been talking about output for the past 20 minutes. And I think like with output back then, wingers used to be different. So people didn't really look at output like that. It was probably more eye test and obviously what they achieved. I really liked him in his time at Newcastle. Man, this is tough.
If
Look,
Overmars is
I'm
unranked,
gonna-
he's got to be, mate, because a lot of
No,
it is
no,
how he makes
no
you
way,
feel.
no way. Listen, you have bias because he played for Tottenham. I don't have that bias.
On
You know,
more
like,
than
the-
I'm gonna go David Ginola, top class. That's what I'm gonna put
top
him.
class.
Wow.
David Ginola
Top class.
passed the eye test in terms of ability and his looks, man. Look, I'm a straight man, but Jesus Christ, David Ginola, he's like a fine wine, man. I swear to God.
Do you
I
know
love David
what?
Ginola.
Like, it's an interesting one, really. He had all the skills, but there wasn't a lot at the end of it, though. That's the only thing I would say. And
Isn't that the
but
most important thing? Leading your
He-
team to
he
trophies,
finds out that he's
output.
playing with.
he is. He'd be. Yeah. I mean, he kind of like. I mean, he didn't. He's in 5 years in England. He scored 22 goals in 5 years.
Jerry,
Equally,
you know wingers were different back then.
He won
It
the
wasn't
PFA
about
Player of
goals.
the Year.
I'm so glad you've said that. That's all I was saying that for. Thank you. That's all I need in the bank.
We walked
Ticked
into
off.
that, boys.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
No,
it,
no,
man.
I'm no. I know
Easy.
exactly.
Easy
I am
like
not.
Sunday
I am
morning.
not gonna
So
compare
easy.
Salah
I
Look how
know
to
easy it
exactly
is.
the argument he's
I'm not
using.
gonna do
Look at
that.
this.
Don't
And
worry.
if you're-
Don't worry. I'm not gonna do
We're
that.
gonna walk into
Not
that.
gonna do that.
Nah, I'm joking.
Not
Listen,
gonna
David Ginola was
I'm just responding to the guy next to because he mentioned trophies as well. He played for Villa, Tottenham Hotspur, Newcastle. Where is he expected
You know
to
what
win
you've
trophies?
done. You know what you've done. It's fine. Do you know what? For me, with David Ginola, do you know why I dislike him? It's nothing to do with the way he plays or anything. It's he won Player of the Year in 1999, and no one
Yeah.
from the treble-winning team did. And I remember being 13 years old, And I was doing my nut because I used to think personal awards meant something, and I was doing my nut. And then we found out why it happened. A lot of the things were voted for. It was a joke. It was like a lot of the league voted for someone who, like, the players vote. And there was a fuck them winning their 3 trophies. We'll vote for somebody else. There's a lot of interviews on it. And that's when I was like, it's not real then. So personal awards can go suck on their mum because David Ginola won it and not someone from a treble winning team. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, I digress.
Because everybody was consistently good at United.
That was 22 years ago, and I'm still angry about it. 22 years ago, and I'm still
Terry, but
carrying
you won
that.
the writers one as well, so not just the players.
Yeah, they didn't like us either. Fucking prick. And
Oh yeah,
Do
okay.
one.
No one likes United. Man. Give me a break.
In fairness, on a real though, we had a treble, bruv. Like I'd keep the treble. Right, next up, I'm gonna go to. So he's been put into top class. George, I'm going to give you Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, God. Okay, I've got to be objective here. And we're talking about our time in the Premier League, right? So we're talking about one of the greatest players to have ever played the game. And we're talking about he's got to be in the GOAT conversation. He has to, because okay, look, I'm very caught between Hall of Famer and GOAT because of his time at the Premier League versus his time at Real Madrid. And if we're talking and we're being consistent that we've done this with other players and it's mainly a Premier League debate, he's absolutely a Hall of Timer, even in his short time here. And he did achieve those outputs while he was very young. I think people forget, like, when you look back at Ronaldo, his time at United, he was very young and he was achieving immense output even at the time. We're talking about peak seasons, but I think he did his best football at Real Madrid. And I believe that, he really did that longevity portion at Real Madrid. But his time on the Premier League was enough to mark it in history. So I really struggled to put him in a debate of GOAT when I don't think he was here long enough to do it. But there's unquestioning his output, his role on culture, and his ability. So if he was to maybe win something with United in the next couple of years, returning, you would have a consistency argument.
He's not a winger anymore.
He's a striker.
Yeah, he can't be in the winger conversation.
Yeah, I think that's his overall leg. Do you know what's interesting about Ronaldo? He's the only player on the list so far who has like a season of like record-breaking goals.
Yeah.
His output levels at the time, he was a right winger, scoring, doing things that no one else had done before. So he was trend-setting. He did a 3-peat of Premier Leagues. He did a Premier League and Champions League winning double season. He's the only winger in the history of the league, barring one other, to do that in terms of trophies. He's the only Premier League player, I believe, to win the Ballon d'Or.
No,
Michael Owen did it. Michael Owen did it. Sorry, but he's like one of the only players he did that in his first time. And like what Ronaldo did again, I sometimes think it goes like all the things that everyone sat here and said about Perez, about all the other players. It's like Ronaldo's ticked all those boxes and more.
In his time at the Premier League, though, that's the one question. Like if he had another couple more seasons in the Premier League to do it, I could hear it. But I would say there were 3 phenomenal seasons, like excellent in terms of peak, in terms of trophy count, what he did. But, I don't think he was there long enough to really cement yourself as a GOAT. And I mean, it's tough and it's unfair to him, but he just wasn't there factually to prove it. Now, if he was to come back, and this is why I say win something with this United team, get him up to something, improve the output, then you're talking beyond 3 seasons. And for me, I don't feel comfortable giving a GOAT status on 3 phenomenal seasons.
What it is, though, is that there isn't another winger. Actually, to be fair, Hussein might beg to differ in it, but to me anyway, I totally agree with the arguments that you made, but I just don't think there's a better winger, if that makes sense. So
because we're not counting Henry as a winger, right?
No. Yeah, we're not.
No, Henry's not a winger.
Yeah,
as much
but
as
we all.
I
can't wait to get to the Salah part because
I was gonna put him in, but then I looked at it and he actually only played something like, according to Transfer Market,
stupid. It was with Monaco.
It was like 60, 70 games at Arsenal where they counted him as like a left inside forward, 200 plus more as a striker. I'm like, if it was 50-50, I might have thrown him in for a bubble, but I didn't. Yeah. So I think him being in Hall of Fame is fair. The crowd are obviously going to have their say with their super chats really, really soon. We get a trump card as well. So the last pick of the panel tonight goes to young Tom. And Tom, I'm giving you Mohamed Salah.
The big one.
Easy answer, Tom. Easy answer.
But he's not the GOAT yet, though, is he?
Oh
He's-
my
he's- give him 3 more years. He's on the cusp. That people won't like to hear that he is on the cusp of being the greatest Premier League winger of all time. But he isn't there yet because he needs another Premier League at least. He needs another Golden Boot, and he probably needs another Champions League, just because of the status of Ronaldo. But what Mohamed Salah is doing is so underrated. It's criminal. It's criminal. Even this season, at the start of the season, 9 games into the season, 9 goals, 3 assists. The only players with better numbers are Benzema and Lewandowski, who were in the Ballon d'Or conversation. And Mohamed Salah's name isn't even mentioned in it. Their debut season for Liverpool, Chelsea was poor, but he was young, he came in, and that just weren't the right time. Liverpool, first season, 32 goals, 10 assists in the Premier League alone. Breaks the record as a winger who he was supposed to come in and be second, like the other one to Sadio Mane. And he came in and broke Ronaldo. Was it Ronaldo, Henry,
Yes.
and Suarez? All them shared 31, and he came in and got 32. The amount of records he's broke is astonishing. Premier League 100 club. Only had 1 season where he was below 20 Premier League goals because he only got 19, but got 11 assists.
And for context as well, just for goals and assists, sorry, like I'm backing you up here, but in terms of Premier League and Champions League football, non-penalty goals and assist rate, he's only beaten by Thierry Henry and Sergio Aguero. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 that have beaten him in terms of goal and assist per 90.
I want to say about there's two things I want to say about Mohamed Salah, because I'm a Man United fan, but I've got a lot of love for Mohamed Salah.
Yeah.
I don't even know why. I just like what he does. You know, I think he's directness. I like direct players. I like hardworking players. 2 things. One's a negative, and it ain't him. I put out the stats yesterday about Bruno Fernandes being the fastest ever midfielder to 50 goals and assists. He did it in 58 games, the same as Mohamed Salah. And they're angry that he should say 47 or whatever. Something you can't discount his games for Chelsea. He did play for Chelsea. So his early years when people say Ronaldo's first 2 or 3 years, he wasn't that great, but he was 18, 19, 20. If we're going to take that out and go, he weren't great then, you have to include when Salah wasn't great. That's the one thing I would say it's a negative. The positive is this. I did some numbers today because I do think numbers are important when you're talking about the very best in the world, because when it comes to separating GOATs and great players, numbers have to play a part. We're not talking about comparing, he's won 2 titles, Luke Chadwick's won 3, therefore Luke Chadwick is better. That's just anybody that does banal debates like that. They don't need any time. The goal and assist ratio right now of Mohamed Salah in 3.2 seasons time, on his average game per season that he plays, he will match the amount of games played by Thierry Henry in the Premier League. And he is tracking in that time to be 2 goal contributions in front of Thierry Henry. At the same time, he's the talisman of his team. It's not Van Dijk. It isn't Trent. It isn't Jordan Henderson, in my opinion. They're all very pivotal because it's a team game. But he is the talisman. He is the consistent goal scorer. Goals are the hardest commodity to come by in football. They're the hardest thing. It's why they get paid the most. It's why they're worth the most. Every football person tells you goals are the hardest thing in the game. He delivers it on a consistent basis. The only thing he needs more is more trophies. He needs to add more trophies in terms of getting his team over the line to win trophies and being pivotal within that. And not only do I think we're looking at a player that could be considered the greatest winger of all time, Mohamed Salah, if he's as consistent as he's been for the last 4 years for the next 3.2 seasons, and I'm doing that because of numbers, but the next 3 to 4 seasons, he is in the conversation to legitimately challenge Thierry Henry for the GOAT status in the Premier League with some more trophies, because Thierry Henry, to his detriment, it's not his fault potentially, but no Champions League, no European pedigree at all in terms of trophies being lifted.
That's just Arsenal.
And but he was at Arsenal when they were very, very good. So that's not Allow that. Let's not think of Arsenal then as we think of Arsenal now. And I know there's always a lot of things that get thrown out where we nearly won 3 titles on the bounce because there was that one year where United stopped them. And after that, we did the Invincibles. By that logic, we have to look at Eric Cantona differently because the season that he got suspended for kicking that racist in the face, we missed out on the league that year by a point, I think, to Blackburn.
Yeah,
if you discount that, that means we won 5 on the bounce. We didn't, but we would have done if he was playing maybe. But I honestly look at Mo Salah and see a player that is legitimately tracking towards. He isn't there yet, but he's tracking towards being potentially the greatest player in Premier League history on the most important metrics: consistency of outputs, records that he's breaking, and lifting trophies. And I look at those 3 things as 3 of the most important. And by then, when he doesn't have 3 or 4 seasons, you're then looking at someone doing 8, 9 years. You're then adding the cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake, which is the consistency. And the reason that's important is we spoke earlier about the Alexis Sanchez's and the likes who have these 2 or 3 years where they're amazing and then they die. Not literally, they fall off the edge of a cliff. Maintaining that brilliance is an art in itself. Managing your body, managing your physicality to last longer is part of sport. It's so important. And I'm so impressed with Mohamed Salah. And the reason I fight his corner is because Mohamed Salah suffers with something at Liverpool. And it's the same reason why Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs don't get the recognition they deserve. For whatever reason, he's not the poster boy of Liverpool's brilliance. He's amazing, but Trent gets elevated much more. Van Dijk elevated much more. And by the way, those players are brilliant as well. But Mohamed Salah is down the pecking order. What happens when you're suddenly part of a team where there's 3, 4, 5 superstars is 2 or 3 get left behind that don't get the recognition because you can't not everyone can be the poster boy. When your club's very good and you have one outstanding player, everybody gravitates towards them. If Eden Hazard was Eden Hazard, but during the best Chelsea era when all their best players were in their pomp, he would have been loved, but I think the love would have been shared a little bit more. Mo Salah suffers with the fact that there's all these little pockets of who people look after. And I don't like seeing that because he is Liverpool's greatest ever Premier League player and needs to be respected for it. He's the only player in their history that's tracking towards being the GOAT of the league. And I think he's impeccable. I really do think he's impeccable.
Terry,
I
only tested by 2 strikers.
I want to chip in because people love to cuss out Mo Salah based on his history at Chelsea. But if you actually deep it, he got a goal or assist one every 3 games, which is not a bad record there.
Coming off the bench as well.
Coming up, exactly. So if you actually then reduce it to the amount of minutes he was playing for Chelsea, for how many goals and assists that he got, didn't get many. He was 2 goals, 4 assists. Not great, right? But in 19 games, that's not bad. And when you put it down to minutes, and that is also an awesome record. For me, I think you're being modest by putting him into Hall of Famer. Out of all the names that we've
that's
mentioned
what
so
Tom
far,
does. Tom is just too nice, man.
No, but I'll rate that as well. But what I see on the eye test alone, and for how long he's been doing it, and the numbers, I'm not a massive fan of goals and assists. I have used it a couple of times already, but out of all the ones that we've listed so far, for what we've seen in the Premier League, Mo Salah has to be in the GOAT status.
I mean, one thing
I just want to say one thing with the
best player in the league.
With the poster, go on, Tom.
I mean, best player in the league every year he's been here. Even last season, when we were awful, there was the one man who, all the chips were down, we had someone to drag us through it. He came up with 21 goals.
Do you mean for your team, Tom, or do you mean in general in the whole Premier League, best player? Just to clarify.
Premier League. Every season he's been the best player in the Premier League. Every season.
I don't know
Daniel,
about that, but I was with you in terms of your team.
The only argument you've got is Kevin De Bruyne. That's the only argument you've got.
I don't know about that. I can agree with that.
No, but you guys are laughing. Who else gets into the equation though besides Kevin De Bruyne?
Can I just make one quick point though? I see.
So all the left is just haha.
Hold on, really quick. No, really quick. So I think Terry's spot on with he's tracking to that if he can keep up the consistency, which there's no reason to think that he won't. But I mean, that's still 3.5 seasons to go. he has to keep up that consistency. So all the Liverpool fans that are sitting there doing the I saw you, Husam, one of these, he's not quite there yet, but he does have to do it. And I won't fight it. Like, first of all, I probably won't be here in 3.5 years. If I'm still here, slap me, you guys. Like, I shouldn't be on the terrace at 30-something years, 35 years talking about great other shit.
Go now then. Go now. We don't need you. We don't need you.
Wow, she literally just said that. Oh my God.
The amount
I'm
of
gonna
help
be
I'm
too
giving
big
this
for
young
you,
lady
Terry.
in the last few months, I ain't having it. Get out of here with your granny cardigan. Do what? No, I'm only messing. I'm only messing.
All I'm saying is that, like, I won't fight it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, okay, well, it's Thierry Henry and he's this and that. I love Thierry Henry. He'll always be my GOAT, but those are extraordinary numbers if he can get to it. And but at the same point, like, Thierry Henry has the commercial and branding backing and all of the fun stuff. I don't think Mo Salah has that. And I think Liverpool fans, if he does get to that point, you have to push it. You have to push it because Thierry Henry is a superstar. Mo Salah is kind of under the radar. You can't let him go. You can't let him slip under the radar.
That was the point. I just wanted to address from what Terry said with the poster boy thing. With the who should go near him?
Yeah, Hussein, go on.
Yeah, with the poster boy thing. I think first of all, Gerrard is Liverpool's greatest Premier League player. Let's stop with that. But anyway, listen, with the Salah situation, the poster boy thing, I think you would be completely spot on if we were having this conversation last summer. But ironically, the worst season under Klopp is the season that made Salah the poster boy, because it made everyone realize that he's categorically the best player. Because in the season where everyone just fell off completely, the system collapsed, we had to play Phillips and Williams, etc. The one player who was producing consistently was him. And I watched the compilation yesterday of the chances he actually created for the other front two as well last season. He created so many chances, but Firmino and Mane literally fell off.
But my point remains. That's 4 years into him being at Liverpool. It took for the Liverpool fans to one of the sort of I always get called out by Liverpool fans because most football fans don't like hearing the truth about their own fan base and their own club. A lot of Liverpool fans in the last few days are like, how dare the media say we undervalued or underrated Mo Salah? You did. They did. They absolutely did. And I don't know why they did. And you have to push these players. I so wish I could go back in time now, get in a DeLorean, go back and be like, listen, we've got to do so much more like prop around Paul Scholes. We have to push it out from those early days. In fact, we have to make Paul Scholes put himself out there a little bit more. He didn't. I mean, man used to go home after a game and have fish and chips and sit down and watch, I don't know, Family Fortunes. He was nothing, like, he just no personality. And it's true, this stuff matters. It's a popularity contest. The player awards are a popularity contest at the highest degree.
They're not.
No, they are, because they're about how you feel about someone. I had said earlier on today, if you ask me I know what Steven Gerrard sounds like to talk. How little Paul Scholes used to speak when he first
retired.
That's
not on me though.
No, sorry.
That has nothing to do with the. I don't think it's the media thing or whatever. Like on the pitch, Gerrard is just levels above.
He's not levels above. Scholes. It's just stupid to say that. It's a stupid thing to say. Popularity plays a big part in this. When Paul Scholes retired and started doing punditry, do you know, for like 2 or 3 years, everybody hung on his word because no one had ever heard the fucking speak for 20 odd years. It was like, oh my God, Paul Scholes is speaking. Like, it was like every word that come off his mouth. Man United actually done themselves dirty because everything was shoeboxed. No one spoke. You never saw Man United players or managers on any kind of TV show, anything. It was all in-house. And those things went against the popularity competitions. I think they really, and votes, because the media are twisted. But anyway, he's been put into Hall of Famer by young Tom. Final pick. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm being very biased, and it's Ryan Giggs.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Listen. We're talking football here. We're talking football here in terms of ability and stuff. Ryan Giggs is really interesting. We all know the better things about him as a player. And
the trap's been set. The trap's been set, by the way. You're gonna fall into it.
What trap's been set?
Just carry on in it. I'll let you know.
I'm not gonna use GA. Don't worry.
So I'm talking about Terry.
So there isn't any trap that I'm going to set. For me, Ryan Giggs has achieved parts of, if not all of the things that many other players on here has achieved. So one of the highest, creators in the league, the level of assists that he's got, the level of goals that he's got. for a winger in the era that he was a winger is exemplary. He then spent the last third of his career mainly in central midfield, adapting into a different role, a lot deeper in the pitch, for around 340 to 350 games. But he played nearly 900 at the highest level and was instrumental in nearly every single season, 13 of which Man United won Premier League titles. He obviously played and helped the team contribute. He didn't play much in the final against Chelsea. He came on and obviously scored a penalty, but instrumental for getting us to the final as well, which doesn't need to be forgotten. He was absolutely iconic as a football player. Some great goals, some great games, some brilliant moments, transcended the decades. As the game developed and changed, as we've all mentioned it did, he still stayed relevant and he still kept himself at the forefront of the league. The longevity part is huge for me. You know, and I spoke about that on a few players, maintaining yourself, being able to go and adapt and do things. But it isn't just lasting long in your position. For me, with Ryan Giggs, it was the fact that he had the football IQ and the intelligence and ability to go from being a marauding winger who did rely a fair amount on pace. You know, he used to, good skills, but he wasn't twining people up like Ronaldinho. It was, I'm going to knock it past you and run onto the ball. He could cross at speed, which was pretty good. But then he become a much more, I wouldn't call him, he wasn't at a Patrick Vieira or Paul Scholes level in central midfield. No one's denying that. But he was good enough to play 30-odd games a season for Manchester United in midfield that still contributed towards winning league titles. And he was very, very good at that indeed. So when you look at what he's won as an individual, when you look at the records that he holds, he has records to his name, the level of trophies, the longevity of him as a player, that's the reason why I put him into the GOAT category of wingers in the Premier League as it stands right now.
That's the trap. You fell into it.
Go on.
I understand the whole argument that you made, but him turning into a centre mid has nothing to do with this debate. We're talking about the greatest winger of all time.
Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, so it has. I know it's a great thing that he changed to become, but it has absolutely nothing.
Okay. So I'm talking about him as an over. Okay. So you say the trap. So there is no trap here for me. So if we just look at him as a winger, that was when he scored the majority of his goals and assists. So that's when he scored. So, but his goal scoring levels and assist levels were on par, if not better, than barring the Mo Salahs and the Ronaldos, who we've said that it's different now to when those guys are playing. So we can't compare those numbers. When you compare it to the Perez's and the Beckhams and everybody else, it was on par and better. This guy, though,
not in his 3 peak seasons, though, Terry. His 3 peak seasons as a winger, Perez had 60 goals and assists as opposed to Ryan Giggs' 58.
Okay, so there was a peak season that he has above him.
No, 3 peak seasons. Like his best 3 seasons totals with Robert Perez's best 3 season totals. Perez has more.
2 more.
Yeah, but you just said better. So they're comparable. So it can't be that as an argument.
But comparable. But for me, you then add the longevity on top of that as a football player. How many years he did in the Premier League? You're talking about a man that was a winger from the early 90s right through until the mid-noughties. In that time period, his goals and assists were one of the best in the league. His trophies that he won were one of the best in the league. He was voted, we're going to go into player awards here because I know you guys all like player awards. You're the only ones that do like them. He was voted as, the player, the winger of that decade in the Champions League. So the UEFA recognized him as the best winger in Europe in that time period. And the answer's already been done, even on GOAT. I didn't know this until today because I must have missed this. In 2012, the Premier League voted for its greatest ever player. The Premier League. And Ryan Giggs won it over everybody else that we've spoken about. What do you mean so? Hang on. What do you mean so? You guys spoke about
the Premier League is just filled with Man United board members.
Wait. You guys have sat here for weeks telling me awards, individual awards.
No, don't say you guys.
Who's
but none of you, hang on. But none of you guys have come out and said Hasans chatting nonsense. You've all just sat there and gone, like, it suits our purpose. The Premier League gave out an award for the greatest player in the tournament's history, and it was given to Ryan Giggs. That's the ultimate award in the Premier League.
We were just talking about popularity contests, though. I thought we were talking about numbers and pure, you're only using it to suit a narrative in one argument.
No.
Listen, he's talking about my Gerrard argument, and this is why
I'm not using it to suit a narrative. I'm sitting here, and you guys have all said these things are important.
But Roy Keane doesn't even believe it, mate. Roy Keane has made the point that there is a difference between a great player and being part of a great team.
What's Roy Keane got to do with this conversation?
Well, one of your best midfielders of all time, who was with him for his best periods, doesn't rate him like that.
Yeah, but what's that got to do with me?
No, because we're talking about the greatest player of all time. And what we're talking about right now is a player that has had longevity, but was he responsible for the success in the same way that all
hugely.
these other teams were?
Ryan Giggs was massively influential in that success. So if we're just looking at him as a winger from 1992 until 2005, he was massively influential in everything Man United achieved in that period. 4 league titles in 5 years in the first stint. A treble-winning team that also won 3 Premier League titles on the bounce. Not one of these players in the conversation was instrumental in a team for over a decade that won that amount of trophies. In that time, he was also nominated and awarded all the awards that you've all at some points in different shows, George not included, have awarded your players for winning. His goals and assist ratio on an outputs level for that era was very, very good indeed. And yeah, Perez, more goals than him in particular, more
especially
goals
in the Premier League, though. And I'm not even putting him at the GOAT status.
So again, I understand that, but you put him in Hall of Fame.
Yes.
But if you then look at Robert Perez compared to Ryan Giggs has a 15-year winger career, won 3 times as many league titles. He won 4 league titles in 5 years.
Is that a team success
and a treble.
or an individual success? That's
but if you put Robert Perez out of that brilliant Arsenal team and put him in a lesser side, he may not have scored as many goals.
George, Terry, can I ask you a question?
That's true, though. That's true. That's
so that doesn't make any sense.
No.
So we're gonna.
Terry, all 3 of them are wrong,
guys. Let me make my final point. If Ryan Giggs' achievements are going to be discounted because of the quality of team he played in, we now need to go back and look at Mo Salah has played in a Liverpool team regarded as one of the best. So we discount how he's performed because Liverpool are a brilliant team now compared to when McManaman was here. Do we discount what Thierry Henry did because it was Arsenal's arguably greatest ever team in the history of their football club? Why is it only Man United players where we discount the quality of the team when it comes to talking about individual players? We're the only team player, because he's the only one we've really mentioned, barring Ronaldo, that we've done it to. So why are we not discounting everybody else's achievements based on how good their team was?
Terry, I think the GOAT was an easy answer, but I don't know. Like, here's the thing: it's not even. I wouldn't even say Salah. I think the Premier League GOAT is the easiest answer probably, and it had to be Ronaldo. And I say this as a Liverpool fan, so I think Ronaldo is the one who should have been up there, not Salah, not Giggs, not both of them, because even individually, the stuff Ronaldo accomplished at that time was unthought of. Like, people say longevity this, longevity that, but like when it comes to Ronaldo, like, this man like changed an entire culture of football, and like, it's just like off the pitch, on the pitch, everything. Ronaldo was just a next level footballer and won a Ballon d'Or as well, playing on the wing. So it's just like all of these things matter, and people like with Giggs, it's longevity. Yeah. When you say he won the trophies, he did not win the trophies. Man United won the trophies. He was a player in the team. Look at them individually.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. No, so I'm sorry. That is bullshit. Hang on a minute. So Ryan Giggs' trophies don't count because the team won them, but every other player tonight do. That is fucking bullshit.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Don't put words in my mouth. I said individuals don't win trophies. Clubs win trophies. Teams win trophies.
So fine. So when we've mentioned trophies of other players tonight, we should discount them.
No. Yeah, I never use trophies as a measuring stick anyway.
But that was a stipulation.
Did I ever use trophies as a measuring stick?
Sorry. Let's go back. I'm confused. So you just say. Who, me?
How am I a liar? I never used trophies.
I'm a liar.
I have never used trophies as a player ever.
No, I'm confused. Can everyone stop a second? So what did you just say, Husim? I swear you've just said Ryan Giggs didn't win trophies, the team did. My response is, so we have to discount every player's trophies because they didn't win them on their own either.
That's not what I said.
Sorry. Am I mad here? Am I mad?
Bro, in comparison, don't use team trophies because teams win them, not individuals.
Why are you lying?
That's what I'm saying. You asked me about Ginola, Alexis Sanchez, and I forgot the third guy. One sec. All 3 of them, did I mention a trophy? When you ask me about Sanchez, did I go like, oh, he won the FA Cup? Ginola didn't win a trophy, and I put him top class.
Do you know why?
No, because there's 2 players that were mentioned in that argument. That's what he said. Let me get this.
I'm consistent, bro.
They used to win games. They used to win games single-handedly, and I don't believe that Ryan Giggs used to win games single-handedly. So I understand that argument of winning, like the team won the trophy, not the individual. But
yes,
Ryan Giggs
thank you. That's
important in certain games, but like. Mo Salah single-handedly has won loads of games for Liverpool. Thierry Henry single-handedly won
Ronaldo.
countless for Arsenal.
Who's the
Ronaldo
same guy that
won
will tell you?
countless games for Man
Who's
United.
the same guy that will tell you that Gerrard? It was Gerrard who won the trophies for Liverpool, not the team. You're the same
I
guy
have
that
never
will-
used trophies as an
Guys,
argument for
I'm
Gerrard.
sorry,
ever.
I'm going to just say this now. What you've just said
I've
about
never
Ryan
used that
Giggs
argument.
not be the point here is, out of everything you've said, the only trap that I will say makes sense is a central midfield thing. But the central midfield thing is me talking about how good a football player he was. But we can discount that. I'm absolutely happy to. The biggest bullshit I've heard tonight, and I have to be very assertive with this, Ryan Giggs was instrumental in every season, 92, 93, 94, 90, right the way through, the games, the goals, the assists. You don't remember because you man weren't born how he was praised in that era. Voted the best winger in the league for that time period. No one come close to him in terms of awards and prestige and critical acclaim. Plus, he had the trophies and everything else to back it up. And you remember, he was doing that in the start of Man United's dominance. So in the first years he started dominating and winning, we weren't regarded as a winning team, a winning unit that just steamrolled people. We weren't even the favourites to win the first couple of Premier League trophies based on our history, and he delivered. He was massively integral in so many of those wins. And do you know how we know this? And this is the biggest thing you've got to remember. Sir Alex Ferguson did not take passengers. Once you become dispensable, whether it be through attitude or lack of ability, Sir Alex Ferguson moved you on, especially pre the Glazers, when he was able to do a little bit more than what he wanted. Whether it was Yap Stam making a comment in a book, whether it was Beckham's attitude, whether it was what he did in the mid-90s, getting rid of 3 of our best players in Ince, Kanchelskis and Mark Hughes to bring through more of these youth players that he saw a massive future for, you got moved on. When the likes of Nicky Butt and Phil Neville were no longer good enough, or they'd gone a bit stale in the team, he moved them on. To be maintained, forget what he did as a central midfielder, to be maintained in one position for nearly 15 years under Sir Alex Ferguson is proof that he was integral. And was there a few off seasons within that? Yeah, but most of these players have had a season where they've been a little bit off the boil. And if you were to look at 15-year careers of people, they've had seasons where they've been a little bit off the boil. The biggest lie told about so this is now 2 debates on the bounce, maybe even 3, where Scholes did nothing to help Man United win. Giggs did nothing to help Manchester United win.
Who said that? Who said that?
The man next to you. You said Scholes did not influence Man United winning.
Scholes, yes.
No,
Giggs, I did not say that for Giggs, though.
That's cap.
You just said Giggs didn't win stuff the team did. He wasn't that influential when Gav just said it.
First of all, the guy who said Giggs was not influential is the Arsenal fan on the right corner, not me. Gav said that, not me.
You agreed. I just saw you agree with it.
Terry, listen, my ultimate point is one thing. Let me just say one final thing. My ultimate point is, when comparing individuals, we should not look at team trophies. The perfect example, Daniel just spoke about earlier on on the same video. He mentioned Heung-min Son. If Son remained at Tottenham for the next 5 years, he's never going to win a trophy, but will forever be known as one of the best Premier League wingers ever. You could literally make an argument right now. Or you could make an argument right now he's better than Mane.
You're wrong. You're wrong, Christian. No, you're wrong. Let me tell you why you're wrong. Let me tell you why you're wrong. Because if you don't leave and go to a club where it's demanded that you win, we don't know how you handle the pressure of having to deliver. You don't know that, and that's the pressure. At the end of the day, like, the thing about the trophy thing is also weird, because when I was sitting there saying what I meant about Mo Salah and how what he just needs more is those goals and then those trophies to take him beyond Henry, you're like slam dunking and celebrating, but clearly the trophies don't matter then. See,
no, I slam dunked on the golden boot thing.
You slam dunk. You know what you're doing there.
I did this on the golden boot thing.
For me,
and because it gets into the discussion,
he gets into the discussion, ever had,
even based on individual awards. I didn't put Salah first. I said Ronaldo first. So I
think we're getting off track. The issue that I want to have with this is defining in terms of what you consider a GOAT. And for me, what I look at is trophies. I look at, are you a part of a team of doing something that hasn't been done in history? And in your 3 best seasons, what is your goal and assist output compared to the others on the deck? Now, the issue that I have with Ryan Giggs is he's been part of a team that hasn't been done something in the Premier League. Check. Absolutely. His 3 best seasons. Does he have the greatest goal and assist? Because when we're looking at numbers, which has been a big part of the debate, does he have higher numbers than others that have done something that in the Premier League that has never been done? Has he also been a part of a team that has won trophies and plentiful trophies? And has he done it over a period of more than 3 seasons? My issue with Ryan Giggs is he wasn't the driver for Manchester United's success over 3 seasons.
He was.
It's not that he's a poor player. His peak 3 seasons were not as much as Robert Pires. And that's the issue that I have with
the only thing right about that is the output element. In terms of him not being pivotal in our teams, that's just not true. He was integral.
You said driver.
Driver. I didn't say.
Okay, well, hang on.
Driver is the one that is responsible for winning that season.
There's no one player. There's no one player that's responsible. It's a team game. I'm sorry. No, because when Arsenal were being called a one-man team, you're like, no,
there's no one man responsible, but we should use.
No, but we have secondary creators. I mean, there's no part in our greatest success here.
Makes it make sense.
No. There's you contribute. There's no one man who is like, how do I word this in the right way? Of course,
there's no one man who wins you trophies, but there's the face. That's what I'm saying. Like,
that face changes. That face changes, right? So, from Man United's point of view, you'll have Ruud van Nistelrooy. We actually didn't win a lot under Ruud van Nistelrooy, but he was like the star boy for that 3 or 4 year period because he was getting all the goals. But what about everybody that was building things up? You just sat there about, I know you didn't call him the GOAT, but your big argument about Eden Hazard was that he often got the assist before the assist. He influenced the games without the assist. That's what Ryan Giggs was doing for 10 years. 10 years he was doing that.
The difference is Hazard was the driving force behind Chelsea.
But Ryan Giggs was a massive driving force. I'm just telling you, for someone that was there at the games and watched it, he was hugely influential. Hugely influential. A huge driver. Huge driver.
I don't know people saying he wasn't influential, but I'm saying he wasn't the face or the best player on Man United's team.
It doesn't matter that he wasn't. But it doesn't matter that he wasn't the best player because we're talking about wingers. And he was for 15 years our best winger. And in that 15 years, nobody achieved over all the metrics we spoke about tonight more than Ryan Giggs.
But is that from a longevity within the time? Like, you're looking at output. And again, my point is when you look at and I don't even want Pires, but when you look at the pure outputs in terms of comparing them, in a third of the appearances, he's got 40 less goals in the Premier League in a third of the appearances. And I don't even want to put Pires up there, but I'm just surprised you're not putting up Ronaldo in terms of your team.
Do you know the only difference is?
I feel like that's the better argument there.
Yeah, I would say Ronaldo.
That's because I hold longevity, and I said it earlier, maintaining yourself for a long period of time, being as influential, as pivotal, and I'll use the word driver if that's the language you want to use, in that Manchester United team was huge for me. And Ryan Giggs, as a football player, is one of the most disrespected in the Premier League. The same as Paul Scholes, the same as Roy Keane. And I was speaking to a Liverpool fan about this the other day. It will come to your team at one point. So listen, honestly, this is why I know it's cap. Because in the last 5 or 6 years, across multiple debates I've sat on, let's just go back to the pre-2004 era at Man United. Gary Neville's been looked at as average. Roy Keane and Paul Scholes are both looked at as not being overtly influential. Beckham's called overrated by a lot of people. Ryan Giggs wasn't pivotal in what we do. If all that was true, then why would we dominate all your teams for 15 years? That's why
that happens to great players, right? Like everyone makes cap in terms of arguments. No,
but my point is,
when we all do that.
But yes, but every single Man United player from that era, every single Man United player from that era gets downplayed like they weren't very good, and we get told it was the team. But if they were all overrated, how could it have been the team?
I don't think it's an overrated thing. I don't think it's an overrated thing. I think what happens when it comes to those sort of things, like Man United were like consistently good. Every single player was a guaranteed minimum 7 out of 10 every single game. Whereas you look at the other teams that have been doing bits and bobs, you'll have like a period where you're smashing it and you're winning games X, Y, Z, or by however many goals, and then you end up losing to someone dross, and like your ratings go down. Man United was so consistent with it. And as you mentioned earlier before as well about passengers, Ferguson didn't have any passengers. And if you weren't really cutting it, you weren't really doing your piece, you're out the door. So Man United maintained that level for years. And because of that, that's why they were so good. They had great players, had world-class players at times. They had players that had world-class ability, but might not necessarily been world-class at that time. but they were just consistent all the way through, and that's
I'm
why they were
uncomfortable using the X, Y, and Z as shit because we're talking about the greatest of all time, and they're very, very good. And what I think the big point that I'm struggling to understand is even in your best teams, I would classify what Ronaldo had done in those United teams as a driving force of those seasons and his peak.
You're not going to get any argument. Sorry,
trophies.
George. You're not going to get any argument for me putting any Man United player over Ryan Giggs. It doesn't really bother me. I just don't. What we actually said. So, would you guys say if I was to go like name players, yes or no, better than Giggs, Robert Perez?
No.
I would prefer Robert Perez.
So
over Giggs.
Eden Hazard better than Ryan Giggs.
Can I say something real quick on Giggs?
Tom,
The
this
thing
is
with
all
Ryan
your
Giggs-
mistake. If you just
What
put
is
Salah
better?
at the GOAT, we wouldn't have had this
It's not-
entire conversation, bro.
The thing with this Ryan Giggs, the thing with this Ryan Giggs, I never got to watch peak Ryan Giggs. I
None of
can
you
only
did.
go off what I've heard. So what?
None of you did.
I've seen
Gareth.
him play before.
just
When Ronaldo was at United,
I'm
Ronaldo was
sorry.
the best player in
No,
United for 3 years. He was the best player in United for 3 years. Giggs was never. You'd struggle to say Giggs was ever the number one player
Yes.
at United, but he was always in the top 3 or 4.
That's
for
the
that
point about the
entire
drivers
time
and being
span.
the face.
So
of it.
again, but
No,
okay,
it's
but on that,
you
but
can't
on that,
downplay it because he's in a team of
again, but
world-class
on that
players.
point, over the last 4 years, everyone said Virgil van Dijk was your best player. Therefore, Mo Salah can't be the best winger. That makes sense, does it? See, all
That's
these
not what I'm
things
saying.
don't make
No,
sense.
The one thing I do want to say is that I think we have to figure out what's more important. I think there has to almost be a ranking for how important certain awards and achievements actually are. Club achievements or team achievements should probably be a lot lower than individual.
Fact.
You see what I'm saying?
No.
You know what I mean? Because I think because Ronaldo got a Ballon d'Or while he was at Manchester
Yes.
United, he instantly becomes closer
Cool.
to the GOAT conversation
then
than
we
Ryan
do
Giggs.
that.
I think
And Ryan,
you're just kind of
Okay, go on.
arguing Ryan Giggs into it
But
because
Ryan
he has-
Giggs got voted by the Premier League as the greatest ever player, so therefore he wins by
But
default.
a Ballon d'Or is much better than that. Like, what do you mean?
yeah, exactly.
But we're not talking about. But we're talking about greatest. Okay, but then we can put Giggs in. But we're saying awards, and the biggest award that was given out in the Prem was after 20 years. Who was voted by the Prem, journalists and fans as the greatest player, and it was Ryan Giggs. So if we're going to
But
go by
Terry,
awards,
who
why
else
does
would have won that? Who was his competition for that trophy, for that award? Who was his
Do you
competition?
want to know who his
Look,
competition?
look,
Hang
because no one else played as long-
on. Let me tell you. I'll tell you who his competition was for that.
Okay, go
He
on.
got
go
voted
on.
in over Dennis Bergkamp, Wayne Rooney, Thierry Henry, Roy Keane, Cristiano Ronaldo,
Why
Paul
that's
Scholes,
silly,
Alan
though?
Shearer, and Patrick Vieira. That was the competition,
Sorry,
and that was
but
what he
you
got
know-
voted over. But we've just
Okay,
said
but
awards
Giggs
count.
played
He
from
wins
92
that
to
award, and that award
2012.
don't count. I don't listen. Let me just be honest with you. I don't actually care if Ryan Giggs gets it or not. We can give it to Ronaldo. My point
Yes,
is,
Ronaldo.
and I don't care how rude I sound, nearly every single point you've all made has been apocryphized by another point you made about somebody else tonight. I don't care if Ryan Giggs gets it or not.
Terry, how?
One minute,
My
1 minute awards count and they don't. 1 minute winning trophies.
I've kept it
matters.
consistent
My
for a
issue
while.
has been the
1 minute
longevity argument in terms
The
of
longevity is
his
amazing.
status.
You asked
But
Giggs
my
over
issue with
Perez,
the
and I said
longevity,
Giggs is over Perez.
It's
I said that.
massive.
my
It's
issue with the
massive.
longevity is that
I've kept
he
it
wasn't
consistent.
at that standard with the longevity that you're claiming. The
He
only
was.
argument that you're
He
saying
was.
he wasn't the
was.
driver of all those seasons, though, Terry.
He
mate.
was a massive driver in every one of those seasons. That's why
He
he was
wasn't
voted
the
best
driver.
winger. Why he was voted the best winger in the league between 92 and 2002. Voted the best winger in the Champions League between 1992 and 2002 by UEFA in the Premier League. He then won the 20-year award as the best player in the tournament because he was a driving force to continual consistent success at Man United.
Mate, I am struggling even as a United fan. Like, you would put Giggs ahead of Ronaldo for his time in the Premier League. Like,
Everything he did, yes.
I really struggle to understand
You'd
that.
put
It
Giggs
was-
ahead of Ronaldo, Terry?
Based on what you guys were saying earlier, I look at Ronaldo and it's 3 or 4 years of like his peak was above Ryan Giggs, but Giggs' peak was maintained as a winger for 15 years.
I don't think his peak
15
was.
years.
I don't agree with that.
It is true.
That's not true, though, Terry.
How
When
is
you
it not
say his
true?
peak was
How?
maintained.
How
No, but
is
when
it
you
not
say his
true?
peak was maintained, do you
Because
mean
his
he
three
played
best
at his
seasons
best
still
for
don't
15
beat
years?
Robert Perez. And
That
I
doesn't
don't
matter,
even want him in the debate, but that's just
that's
facts.
not the point. But that isn't the point of what I'm saying. I'm saying
But you just
Ryan
said his
Giggs-
longevity was maintained in every year, but
It
they
was,
weren't.
and
It wasn't
you know what,
maintained, though.
there was a few seasons in that period where he wasn't at his highest
There you go.
standards. But
But they weren't just a few, though, Terry, were they?
We're talking overall, and dipping for a season and then coming back up and being pivotal again.
But it wasn't like he went 30 goals and assists, and then one had a pour, and then went back to 30 goals and assists.
But no one was getting. But very rarely were players getting 30 goals and assists in that era. We already discussed that earlier.
I'm using it as a facetious output target.
Okay, but the idea is when we were talking David Ginola and he scored 22 goals in 5 years in the Premier League, he's been put in as top class, and no one had an issue with that.
Don't put me there. I didn't agree with that.
Overall here.
Terry, I've maintained the same thing.
I keep hearing the same stuff over and over again. Ryan Giggs, you're all telling a Man United fan what I witnessed in my lifetime. Ryan Giggs was pivotal. He had a little period between I think 03 and 04 where the fans weren't happy with him. He had some bad injuries on his hamstrings. When he resolved that, he was back to delivering again on a very regular basis. This man was wanted for over 10 years by the best clubs in Serie A. They were desperate for him and couldn't sign him. All these things just go unnoticed. If you listen to what professionals have seen, about Roy Keane's comment about him earlier, the likes of Inzaghi said that Ryan Giggs is the only football player to ever make me cry watching things. Listen to what those pros have said about him. Every argument you've all made, there's a counter argument for, which is why when it comes to all the metrics we're looking at, outputs, very, very good. Consistency of performances and being pivotal in a team that won more than every one of your clubs put together in that time period, he was pivotal in. We've already, Ryan Giggs was backed 100% by the greatest manager of all time, never moved on, very rarely dropped, used in the biggest and the best games. He achieved things on the pitch that no other players in England have ever achieved before and may never achieve again. All those things for me, with the longevity, which is key, make him the greatest winger in the Premier League ever for me. In terms of individuals having certain peak periods or 2 or 3 years where they've been better than Giggs' peak, his main peak, yeah, I can argue that. But I put the longevity over that.
Look,
I put the longevity over it.
Why that point is silly then is that if we'd have the best striker debate, then Rooney wins it without anyone. There's no debate.
Yeah, exactly.
But Rooney should be in the conversation.
Yes, but
he would win it.
Giggs is in the conversation, but Ronaldo should win it.
That's the point I'm making. Rooney isn't.
But none of you put Ronaldo in it earlier. Barring Jules, no one wanted.
That was the guy next to me. That wasn't me. If you gave me Ronaldo, I would have said go straight away.
I've said Ronaldo.
And you were listing off like who do we think is better? Like I just personally think, of course, longevity when you have it is in your corner, but it shouldn't be at the detriment to other wingers who didn't spend their whole careers in the Premier League. Some guys had to take the next step. And the next step wasn't other.
No,
I don't use it as the argument to rank them above others.
No. Longevity is an argument for Giggs.
It's a argument. Yeah,
it's not to the detriment of everyone else. No way. That's why when you ask me, who do I think is a better footballer, Hazard or Giggs? I'm picking Giggs. Who do I think is a better footballer, Ronaldo or Giggs? I'm picking Ronaldo. Like that's the reason why.
I understand that, but we're not talking about best footballer. We're talking again. This was something you guys threw back at me a few weeks. We're talking about greatness here, and greatness includes everything. I've never said at once that Ryan Giggs was a better footballer than anybody. Everything he's achieved, all in all, make him the greatest winger in Premier League history. And it does to me. I mean, the 13 Premier League titles is, speaks for itself, and he was still pivotal in that. But viewers, look, there's lots of super chat to jump into here. Baz says,
shoot.
All right, bro, I'll speak to you soon. Baz here says, Cristiano Ronaldo is number one. You Salah can score 1,000 more goals and he'll never reach the levels of what Cristiano Ronaldo did. So Baz wants to move with his super chat here, Cristiano Ronaldo into the GOAT category as he's done right now. It's going to cost.
If Salah scores 1,000 more goals, I'd probably.
He's obviously being a little bit facetious. He's obviously being facetious with that. He's obviously being facetious. Pricey said in a super chat, this is the problem when you have people who have never watched Ryan Giggs in the early 90s trying to rank him. They have no idea how great he was. Giggs is the greatest winger in Premier League history, is what Pricey's got to say. So that actually moves Cristiano Ronaldo out of that box there, and in, because that was another £10 super chat from him. Let me get these all up in front of me now. Terry's forehead, thank you very much, says, sit down, Terry. Their trophy argument is completely valid. I get that. Do you know, look, the trophy argument is only ever put out by fans of clubs who haven't won as many trophies as Man United. It's
we've won more trophies than you. We've won more trophies,
but not in Giggs' era. It is.
Doesn't matter.
And I know what will come. So, and by the way, I know what will happen in 3.5 years' time when it comes to Salah versus Henry. Liverpool fans will say,
I will never use it, Terry. And unlike Jess, I'll tell you, hopefully I'll be here on the terrace and I will use the same argument for the next 3 years. Don't worry.
And you should use it. Gangster Gaming says, Terry, what's your view on Firmino then?
He was pivotal
He was pivotal in your team. He was pivotal.
Yeah,
in your
but
team.
I'll never even put Firmino. Darren Bent is a better Premier League striker than Firmino. So.
Hakeem here says Giggs over Perez, but Perez started inverted wingers, is what Hakeem said. That's also very true. Giggs did play around 20 yards deeper on the pitch than him. George Best won the Ballon d'Or at United, clear of Giggs. Yes, but George Best didn't play in the Premier League era, my bro. Grey Wolf Dinner says Giggs has 13 Premier League titles. Just insane. He's the GOAT. That's from Grey Wolf Dinner. Gangster Gaming says, Terry, you are doing what you say Liverpool fans do with Gerrard. Not really, but if you think that, then I respect that. We had a super chat here from Caesar that says, Terry, make a new tier called God, and only God can be in that list. Sir Eden Hazard. Man wants Eden Hazard in a God tier here. Man stepped up today. Backing his guy.
That the man?
What?
Sorry, is that the man with one Champions League knockout goal in his entire career?
Yeah, but that's not about him. That's about that's about his team. It's about his team. It's about his team. It's about his team.
Oh my
It's about
goodness.
his team. It's not his fault. It's all about his team.
People gloss over Eden
Don't do
Hazard.
that. Don't do that, Terry. Why
Champions
do you twist people's words?
Man.
I didn't twist
talking
anyone's
about
words.
Premier
Yeah,
League
honestly,
as
the
well.
Invinci, you know what I mean? It's all somebody's team.
Yes. Team wins
LFC,
trophy.
yeah, and individual players help them win it. LFC went from the best
They're
to
all the
worst humble
individual.
fans in the world the last few years, and now when they open their mouths, you just want to turn off the video. Bro, listen, in fairness to Liverpool fans, like that's what happened when you win and you become successful. There is an ounce of arrogance that comes with it. 10 minutes to get any more super chats in. If you want to change anything round tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I've enjoyed the conversation tonight, though. It's been a good chat. It's interesting to see what people. I know when it comes to Man United players, we've done so many of these shows. It's always the same stuff from everyone to put United players down. It's brilliant, like legit. And this
Terry, I'm
is
never
any.
gonna do that.
Stop, because you guys have not all been here before. But my point is, every show we've done where there's a GOAT conversation and a Man United player comes up from our peak era, the same arguments are used to put them all down. So it's. And my point is, we've got to about the 7th player now from a Man United team where we've said they weren't really that good, but yet so it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
When?
Not really that good. I mean, we're
I
being a
feel
little
like
facetious
the Manchester
here.
United players are always in there and they're always there.
We're always there, but what they do with Man United is they discount the trophies are the biggest one. So you can't count the trophies, but it's like we had so many good players. That's why we won the trophies. But that's why we were so consistent because we had so many star players and they were all so good at their roles.
I feel like the Manchester United players are always at the tippy top of every tier list when we end.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I feel like Aaron
Right,
Wan-Bissaka was
this is
at the
crazy,
top of the
Terry.
fullback one.
Oh no, don't be silly.
Like,
Seriously.
Terry, if me and you were to make a United Liverpool combined 11 for the Premier League era, there's only one player I'm putting in there, and that's Gerrard. And I'd probably make an argument for one more, and the rest will all be United players. So I'm not doing this for. I'm not doing this for every single player.
But do you know what? It's interesting. It's not about every single player. Like Ronaldo gets a lot of props and stuff. It's more our class of 92 legends that get it. It's the class of 92 guys that get it. It's like, this is generally what's been said on the show. Gary Neville's the only one I'll allow it for, really, I suppose. But like Beckham, he's a model, overrated, weren't that good. You've got Scholes and Giggs just looked at, they weren't that pivotal, they weren't the stars. And it's just not right. Go to Old Trafford and ask proper United fans, like match-going fans or older Man United fans that remember those guys in their peak. And they just laugh at people. When people say, yeah, Giggs didn't do too much for United, it's like, what? You weren't watching. You just weren't. Joshua here says, rivals keep changing the rules when it comes to United players, but never keep the same energy for their own. Just because we hurt your teams, salty as hell, is what Joshua's got to say here.
That's what I was saying before, though, about consistency of Man United players. You know, and like one of those things has to be said about Ruben Nistelrooy, because that guy, I think, was unreal. And but then like going with the trophy narrative, if he did win more trophies, I think we would be talking about him being one of the best ever strikers ever to grace the game.
Exactly. And it goes, even with Man United fans, when they're honest, they love Ruud van Nistelrooy, but he doesn't go into them conversations because we basically won one trophy in 4 years. And the point is, when it comes to our football clubs, when we think about our greatest players, yes, it's about individual performances and what they do in finals, but it's about what they help us to win. So the end result is, if you take away Gerrard's FA Cup final, and Gerrard's Champions League exploits in that most famous of seasons, his legacy wouldn't be, I'd say it was damaged is the wrong words. The affinity that he has is part of what he helped you to win. The reason why the likes of Mo Salah and Van Dijk and these guys are being elevated so much by Liverpool fans is, yes, they're brilliant, but they're winning you things that your heart's desired. To then discount the trophies, it's half of that gone. It doesn't make any sense. Like if Thierry Henry scored all those goals for you, like you guys don't look at Alexis Sanchez in the same way as you do as Robert Pires.
No.
Because he won you trophies. But in the debates, you want to discount the trophies that came with those performances. It doesn't make sense.
Not all of us. Not all of us. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
There's a way of marrying it
I'm discounting it. I genuinely, I will never ever use a trophy.
You can let him do it.
Don't
group us with him,
exactly.
please.
Hassan won't use trophies. He will use individual credits for that. Like when it comes to like marrying you have to marry the two up. And like when it comes to like Steven Gerrard, for argument's sake, I think Steven Gerrard is top 2 in my lifetime. He is the top 2 best ever Liverpool player. But if you ask someone who is say like my uncle's age or whatever, we'll be talking about Gerrard probably being 4 or 5 on the list. But then when it comes to captaincy in my lifetime, I don't think Gerrard is the best captain to ever play for Liverpool. Like the best captain for me is Jordan Henderson. But that doesn't mean.
Oh my God!
Gav, can I ask you a question, Gav? Gav, can I ask you a question? How old are you, Gav?
34.
Okay, so you're my age, which is interesting. It's
but like,
why would you? Can I ask a question though? Why would you rate? What's your reason for rating Henderson higher?
As a captain, leadership. Because when you are surrounding yourself around world-class players and you are able to bring, you're not at that level and you're still able to almost like manage the players on the pitch, that's something that he's done since he's been there pretty much, especially in that 13-14 season. And his influence on the pitch showed, because when Liverpool lost out on that title in those last 3 games, they were shooing suspended. 13-14. If he was playing those games, Liverpool would have won that hands down. And that's not necessarily him as player ability. That is him as his leadership on the pitch. Steven Gerrard is one of the best ever players that I've ever seen, by the way.
But it's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think Gerrard was a different type of captain. Henderson is a vocal one. He's one who will shout at players. He's one who will get at them. Gerrard, it's been well vocal. Gerrard didn't shout much. He was one who went on that pitch and put in 110%, so everyone else had to put in an extra 4 or 5% to stay close to him, as to not look bad. Jordan Henderson, if he put in 150%, would not be as good as some players at Liverpool. But his style of captaincy is more vocal. It's more of the classic one. It's more of the eye-catching one.
I think
compared to Gerrard.
He's a manager on the
craziest statement of all time.
I think what's interesting, I mean, it's an interesting take. If Liverpool hadn't won the Premier League, though, would you be saying it?
Yeah,
Probably
because
not.
they're still different.
Yeah, I'll probably still say
if Liverpool didn't have if they didn't have, but the thing is, if he is the best, it's because it's. I don't know. I don't think if Liverpool hadn't won the Prem or the Champions League with Henderson as a captain, I don't even think people would mention.
He's not the best captain. This is crazy. This is crazy.
I think that's a
Henderson. If the roles were reversed, Henderson would not be able to lead the shit players Gerrard played with to anything ever. Like
Gerrard didn't play with shit players. Stop lying. He didn't play with shit players. He played in midfield with Javier Mascherano and Alonso, bruv.
And who was up front?
Okay, and who else? Tell me. Talk to me. Who else?
Fernando Torres.
Carragher, shit. Fernando Torres injury prone, and you know it.
He had players. Hang on.
What do you mean what? Half of the season, Dabden Go was the striker.
Mate, you know what you do? You love to. This is what you do in Man United. You rewrite history. You're sitting here like Giggs was never doing great things for United, and Scholes barely impacted.
I didn't say that. The Arsenal guy said it, not me.
You said it about Scholes.
I said about
Scholes. You said it about Scholes. Yeah,
yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So one saying about Scholes, one saying about
crazy.
Giggs. You're then rewriting history. Gerrard was playing with League Two players for 10 years.
He was playing with shit players.
It's absolute nonsense.
They weren't.
He was playing with shit players.
They underachieved. That team was not terrible.
No, he didn't. First of all, you don't tell me about underachieve, because He's bigger than your entire football club. So
No, we're
stop
talking
that.
about your
That's
team
no,
right
we're
now.
talking about your
We're
team
talking
right
about
now.
your team.
It's
You're
not
talking
you.
about
Your default is,
You're
look,
Listen,
your team
Gerard
is
did not
terrible. We're talking
underachieve.
about
Gerard
you right now.
overachieved.
You're
Without Gerard, that team would have been relegated.
Gerard
So allow it, man.
overachieved.
Allow it.
You're
Oh
a
my
liar, bro.
God.
You're a liar.
The level of
Ge-
players
Ge-
Liverpool played. I
Gerard
swear to
didn't
God, you guys have
underachieve.
such short memories.
Gerard didn't
Hassan, you're
underachieve.
better than
Gerard was
that,
a
mate.
victim of his peak and his team's peak coming at the same time as one of the best Premier League teams of all time with that United team. That he was just a victim of that. No matter how much Liverpool tried, we would never get a team and a manager combination as good as that United team was at the time when Gerard was at his best. So Gerard didn't underachieve. He didn't overachieve.
You do realise as well, but this is why it makes me laugh. Liverpool, and I'll have to go back and find these stats. It's either about the same or a little bit more. Between the beginning of the Prem and when Fergie retired, Liverpool spent more money than Man United. Like this was a club, and you can laugh at all you want, but every single, again, hindsight's lucrative, and it's very. What I noticed from a lot of Liverpool fans in recent times is you like to rewrite history ever so slightly in the sense of back in the time, those teams were brilliant. They were really good. You used to sit there, and I used to sit there in pubs, in bars with friends. You'd argue how many world-class players you had, how brilliant you were. The only reason now that the narrative changes is because it makes Gerrard look better to say he played around crap. And that's why when you say it, that's why
Harry, you've never met me back then. I was saying they were crap back then as well.
I don't believe you. I'm sorry.
Yes, I was. The only player.
To be fair, Terry, we all do this to a certain extent. I don't agree with what Husam's doing, but I mean, we all tend to do this where we look back at our individual teams and tend to whitewash some of the negatives and enhance a lot of the positives. It's just weird that we've got to Gerrard like the winger debate.
I'm using,
But
George, you make
just mad. Like people want to act like he played with class players. He didn't. And the only time in his entire career where he actually was in his prime and played with good players around him, we got to second in the league, and we finished second because of him. Not in spite of him. That season, by the way, just to show Terry. Let me just say one last thing. To show Terry, I'm actually consistent. That season, six players nominated for Player of the Year. 5 United players. 5. So not from the only one who actually got in with them was Gerrard from Liverpool. Torres got injured for the second half of the season. If we kept Robbie Keane that season, we would have won the league. But we opted to keep Davdingo because Rafa Benitez is a stubborn bastard. So that's why we had to play with Davdingo. And Davdingo is not winning no one.
The reason we didn't keep Robbie Keane was because he wanted to play in Gerrard's position. And that would have meant dropping one of Mascherano and Alonso. We lost that league title because our team just weren't as good as United. We lost less games than them. We just drew more. That's the
exactly
reason.
What I just said, Tom.
But
that's what I just said.
Robbie Keane left. It wouldn't have mattered if we kept Robbie Keane because he wouldn't have played up front.
Yes, we would. Because Torres got injured for the second half of the season.
Listen, but do you know what it comes down to at the end of the day? Like, it's George is right. We all do. Like you remember, especially with nostalgia. Nostalgia is one of these things. Again, as you get older, like when I was younger, every Christmas was white. It wasn't in England. Summers were longer and warmer. We all have this natural habit to do this. But that's why it's important to keep each other honest. And I can take the feedback on the Ryan Giggs stuff. But what I find interesting about it is everything we said about nearly every other player was pretty positive. You start talking positives about Giggs, and it's like, this was wrong, and that was wrong, and this was wrong. And that's why I know he's the best, because of the level of attack that it got. But and maybe it's because I'm used to it. We get bullied as Man United on social media. We get bullied. We get bullied. Again, I'm joking. Like, I'm really not. I like fiery debate.
That's sarcasm.
I love the narrative on Steven Gerrard though, because like what Hassan was saying was like, oh yeah, but we had to play with players like David and Gog. We could break down every single one of our teams and talk about some of the dead players that have played at our clubs. Right? I'll tell you a player who's won a Premier League title. Won more Premier League titles than Steven Gerrard. Oleg Luzhny. That shouldn't be a thing either. You know, but like Oleg Luzhny didn't deserve to be
even Terry would disagree with the argument.
Do you know what though? But do you know what's interesting though? Sorry, Gav makes a good point. So I was watching a few classic games last night. I was on Sky when I was working. And there was like some seasons, and then I went and looked at the numbers. Like there was one year we won the league. We had a winger in Quinton Fortune playing so many games at right back. left back, sorry. Like there was loads of like we actually go back and look at it. You're like, fucking hell, we won a league with him and him playing. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
We won a Champions League, Premier League double with Wes Brown at right back, bruv. Like every team has a player or two. You can go, he weren't very good. You know, we had a few years where we were used like we had
10 players. You could say that about.
No, at the time nobody was saying it. It's only now that they underachieved. Like, how do we protect?
Terry, you never met me. You never met me back then.
I don't care. I'm putting all you Liverpool fans into one basket.
I said that. I said Carragher was shit. I said Glenn Johnson, Finn, and all these players. They just gave us moments. You need consistency to win a league title. They were not good enough to win a league title. If we were to make a combined 11, if we were to go back to 8-09 and make a combined 11, the only one who gets 10 is Gerrard. That's it. Everyone else is United. So how are we saying, oh, he should have won the league? No, he shouldn't.
Because they didn't. No, you wouldn't have gotten a combined in 08. You would not. There's no way. Over Carrick, a midfield that won a Premier League.
Yes, he would.
Hang on, not over a midfield that won a Premier League and Champions League double. He isn't getting in over Owen Hargreaves.
Gerrard gets into every United team in their history. Ever since Man United were formed,
by the way,
Gerrard gets into the
little secret, bruv. Let me just let you into a little secret. When the Premier League did its award for the greatest combined 11 over the first 20 years of the Premier League, Gerrard wasn't in the midfield. Just to let you know, facts.
Doesn't matter.
Didn't vote him in. Well, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. That's it. Gerrard has gotten individual awards that English players could only dream of.
And maybe we can save this for like a midfielder debate because it seems really off pace.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like,
Steven Gerrard would give all them awards back, and he'd let Sir Alex Ferguson have a night with his
That's
missus
not
just
the
to get
point.
one
That's
Premier League
not the
trophy.
point.
It is the
You
point.
always miss the
It
point.
is the point.
I know he would trade them all for a Premier League. I'm
not
saying
that
in
important.
comparison, let's not use team trophies in a comparison. That's all I'm saying.
No. I'm only winding you up.
I don't care about team trophies.
I'm joking. Calm down.
If Gerrard played for United, he would have 13 Premier League titles.
Gerrard underachieved. He underachieved. He underachieved. He underachieved. He should have left Liverpool. He underachieved in his career. Underachieved. No, he didn't. He underachieved. Underachieved. He should have gone to Chelsea. If he'd have gone to Chelsea, he'd be a GOAT.
Yeah, he'd have been just another plastic player, just like the rest of them. So, like, it would have been made no difference. Loyalty matters in football. That's why Carl Puyol is rated very highly in terms of defenders. That's why a lot of players who were one-man clubs are rated highly. Gerrard said, I'm not going to go to Chelsea because no one gives a shit about that football club still to this day. So,
Chelsea to me, that is legs broken.
He'd have just been another player at Chelsea, like, because he would have been better than Lampard and
loyalty means something in football, and this guy celebrates the likes of like Van Dijk going on strike for 6 months to get out of a football club, but it matters.
Look, Terry, mate, I don't think you can make the argument that X player is overrated without any Premier Leagues, but I don't go as far to say underrated. I'm kind of with Tom in terms of I'm somewhere in the middle.
Bro, I love how you talk about football like it's UFC or boxing or tennis. Like he never won the Premier League. It's not. He did not clone himself 11 times.
Bruv. I'm literally winding you up.
It's worked, obviously.
I know.
It did.
It's
it
just a joke. Of course.
Like,
do you know what it is about all my points? Longevity, winning trophies, peak seasons, records. Not one of them for me is stronger than any other. It's about looking at all those pillars, which is why I vote Giggs because he's good in all of them. That's why I put him up there. That's my view. And that's it. Like none of them, because everyone always does that in the arguments. It's like one outweighs the other. The problem when you do that is you're going to slip up in the next debate because your next favorite player is not going to have that one that you weighed up massive in the previous one, like you did with Mo Salah and Neymar recently, where you said Salah's better than Neymar, and it's like Neymar's individual awards in terms of how many he's been nominated for, Ballon d'Or nominations, individual awards, etc., and outweigh Mo Salah's massively. So your argument for Gerrard being on a different planet for Scholes lets you down on your Neymar versus Mo Salah argument.
But Terry, don't we do this when we talk about the best of a player? Because most of us, I think, are logical in terms of having a certain amount of pillars. And when you're at 90% in most of these pillars, depending on how you view the game, you might rate one of those pillars higher than the other. And
yes, that's sorry, go on. Sorry, finish. Sorry.
Yeah, just lastly, like for me, why I had put Ronaldo ahead was I value peak seasons and output a lot more than the value of longevity, which he doesn't have compared to Gings.
And your
but that
point,
might be
and your point there makes but your point there makes sense if in every argument you do that. If the next day you say longevity is the most important thing in the world, I get angry because I'm like, and that's my point here. So nothing you've said is an issue to me. I look at it along the lines of there's 5 things I look at generally. It's outputs, it's trophies, it's records, longevity, and then individual
EPL history
awards.
would probably.
So I look at that because Ryan Giggs is very strong in all of those areas.
Yeah.
That makes him the guy I put on the top. But I will not yield that in a debate tomorrow if you bring me somebody else that has 5 strong areas, but my player Wayne Rooney is only strong in 2. But his 2 strong areas are surpassing that guy. I look at the overall consistency in the package. That's just me as an individual. But and I'm not having a pop at Hussein here. I see it all the time. It's like, I'm telling you, not Hussein, but in a couple of years, if Henry and Mo Salah are very close on outputs, very close on awards, very close on player awards, Liverpool fans will say trophies. They'll use trophies, but then in other arguments, they won't say their count. And they all did it with Souness and Pogba. This is the point I'd make. When Souness and Pogba were Pogba didn't know who Souness was. But when he says, put your medals on the table, every Liverpool fan and his dog was like, yeah, Pogba, you're nothing to Souness. Get your medals out. And it's like, you've just won Man United fans the Scholes-Gerrard debate. And then, no, but it doesn't count for those 2. It's like, pick your battles, mate. Pick your battles. Pick your battles.
Terry, have I not been consistent with all the arguments?
What Hussam's doing, I think it's a little bit delusional, but I rate it because
I'm not delusional, man. Come on, don't do that. Don't do that.
Respectfully,
don't do that. You're delusional if you use trophies. You're delusional because you think Perez is better than Giggs because he has 2 more GAs in 3 years.
You don't have to deflect.
That's delusional. What I'm doing is not delusional because I've seen 10 shit players next to Gerrard and Gerrard do what he did. So I just hate when it's disrespected. The next thing is, Terry, with Salah and Neymar, the argument does not lose because I never said Mo Salah is greater than Neymar full stop. I said he's better right now, which is a totally different argument. I said Mo Salah right now is better than Neymar right now. So it's a different argument.
I think
with the Ballon d'Or.
I understand that one. Again, I am just teasing you a little bit because I'm enjoying it. It's quite funny to poke you with a stick if I'm being honest. And sometimes a lot of people don't know me personally. Sometimes when you see me really animated on stream, I'm not really animated. I'm doing it for a bit of a laugh and a giggle to wind people up. It's just fun. Because if talking football isn't fun, there's no point doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them ones there.
And I'm here to respond funnily as well.
I know you are, mate. And it's all good. Steven Gerrard.
Gerrard is the greatest Premier League midfielder ever. I don't give a shit. I'll argue with anyone, with any point, anything you want to mention. I'm here for it. I am here for Gerrard's argument.
Roy Keane says hello. Steven Gerrard.
Oh, yeah. Give me a break.
Roy Keane.
Patrick Vieira. That's a nice one.
Patrick Vieira.
Don't get started.
Let me just say this now. No. Patrick Vieira, Roy Keane.
Listen, Gerrard 1, Lampard 2.
Hang on.
And then after that, rank whatever you want.
I'm telling you he's better than Gerrard, in my opinion. Patrick Vieira is better than Gerrard.
You're winding me up. It's
better
just
than Gerrard. N'Golo Kante, better than Gerrard. I'm even getting to the point now where I'm thinking, I'm even looking at it now.
Keep going. Who else? Gareth Barry, better than Gerrard. Who else you want to mention?
Rice is going to be better than Steven Gerrard.
That's what we're doing. Marc Overmars, better than Gerrard.
Honestly, bruv, it's coming for him, bruv. That's all it is.
Yeah.
One Premier League and Gerrard's fit. I love it. Listen, everyone that's tuned in, we're at the end of this year.
Bigger than Arsenal by himself.
Yeah, of course he is. Of course he is. That's where we end up. Hazard there in God, which is going to change the color of God there. We're going to change it to white. We're going to change it to white there, like heavenly. There we go. We've got Goat finishes as Ryan Giggs, which is, I'm happy with that. The viewers voted. We've got Perez, Mo Salah, and we can move a couple of people. Who should we move up? I think Hall of Fame, we should move up Beckham and Sterling. Yeah, I like that. I like Beckham.
This is what I said from the start. I said Beckham should be Hall of Fame, but not Sterling though, Terry. Can you please just open the tier list again?
We already went through the Sterling thing. He's already there. 27
years
old.
Who's in top class? Who's in top class? Sanchez, Mahrez, Ginola, and who's the fourth guy?
Mane.
Is that Mane?
Yeah.
Mane.
I'd argue Mane over Sterling, but this would cause us another 20 minutes. So
I mean, Sadio Mane has had no seasons where he's got less than 10 goals. Raheem Sterling's first season with 10 goals was 17-18.
City fans would agree.
No, Raheem Sterling has more.
Mane is better than Sterling. Why do you get up like that?
Mane has 100 goals. No, he has 99 goals in the Premier League. Some of those being for Southampton. I think Raheem Sterling has 90 something. So
97.
yeah, he has
Pretty damn
97.
close.
So
So
when you
comparable
consider the
goal
fact
output,
that
but
they
different
have,
achievements.
and different achievements, and he's so Mane is amazing. He's my favorite like non-Arsenal player. I love him.
Mane
But
was third in the Ballon d'Or voting. Third.
Raheem Sterling is underrated and underappreciated and treated like shit. He should be in the
Yes.
Hall of Fame, period, based on what he's achieved with Manchester City. Longevity as well, just like Mane. But he's
So he
still,
should be in there because
he's
No
still,
his
he has more
longevity.
trophies. He has more trophies. He
No
just- he has
trophies,
more
no
trophies.
longevity. We already said that. No trophy, no longevity.
I said it.
Terry, I never said no longevity. You can use longevity.
No.
All I said was no team trophies.
He wasn't
man.
pivotal.
And Mane is better
He
than
wasn't the
Sterling.
driving force. He
Mane
wasn't
is
the
better
driving
than
force.
Sterling
In what?
using
He
your
wasn't the driving
argument
force.
and my argument.
He wasn't.
Both
KDB,
my argument and your argument,
Aguero,
Mane gets in over Sterling.
company. Like, by the way, I'm being facetious because if you think about Man City's team, I agree with everything you've said about Raheem Sterling. But people would argue that Vincent Kompany, KDB, Aguero, David Silva were all more driving forces than Raheem Sterling.
Which is correct.
They would. But it's bullshit. It's bullshit. They're
Why is it
all
bullshit though?
I tell you why it's bullshit. Because I like talking about non-Man United because everyone's less emotional about it. Because they're all driving forces. That's why they won so much, so consistently. If you have one player that's driving force, all players, barring Ronaldo and Messi, have dips. They have two good seasons. They have a little dip and they come off. When you've got one or two people driving your team forward, they have those dips. Your team wins less. When you've got 3, 4, 5 match winners or drivers, you win more consistently. What you also get is multiple trophy winning seasons because you have multiple match winners. You go back to Giggs and Scholes' peak in the late 90s. You look at like our semi-finals and final winners, you'd sometimes see Giggs got that semi-final goal, Scholes scored in that final, this player scored in this one. It was spread. It wasn't all on one person. And that lack of pressure, it helped. That's why they're more consistent. If it was just all about one player, you'd fall off a little bit easier.
Can I ask you a question, Terry? Can I ask you a question? Using your own barometers, forget mine. Using your own barometers, don't you think Mane is better than Sterling? Because one other thing as well you mentioned is being clutch. Sterling is probably the least clutch player on this entire list.
I wouldn't necessarily, on my own things, I think when you look at them as technically as players, I think they're fairly close. They both lack that. They both miss bad chances. They both do that a lot, right? Where you think they're going to score, they don't. I think most things are quite equal with them until you get to the amount of trophies they've won. And they're both, by the way, been in brilliant teams for 4 or 5 years. But Raheem Sterling and his team have won more. And that's where, when it comes to the trophies, this is where the trophy argument does hold water to me, especially when you're looking at like this Liverpool team versus this City team and the individuals within it. Your teams are like pretty close, but yet City have won 4 league titles in 5 years?
Yeah, but they have bigger squads. That's
I mean, but there's always an excuse, isn't there? It's because their squad is
Terry, you choose to look at things without context. The starting 11, you're right, but squad, they have a much bigger squad. We cannot deny this fact.
Right.
Pep Guardiola is the only manager on earth who could use like 20-something players a season. No one else can do that.
Yeah, but Mike, Hassam, you also won the Champions League and the Premier League in the last 3-4 years as well.
Listen, using your own argument, Terry, this is not my barometer, this is your barometer.
Yep.
Mane won the Champions League and Sterling didn't. And in clutch moments, Mane was there for Liverpool in the Champions League, while Sterling, aka Leon, missed a chance to put them through. All of these things I could say.
He did in that year, and then he was very unlucky not to put them through to the semi-final against Tottenham. You know, Aguero, like the VAR kind of stopped it, but he didn't know that. He put that away. That was unlucky. I've seen Raheem Sterling has done some very good things for Man City in the Champions League. So again, my barometer, I look at it, 3 or 4 Premier Leagues in that time period. I would put Sterling just slightly in front of Mane, but it is very, very close.
For the trophies purely, right? Like they're comparable output. They're both major players in their teams. They both performed at international standards, but just factually the team trophies in the output are slightly more.
And what would change it? This is why the thing comes in. Like you might find that Raheem Sterling this year bangs in 30 goals and then next year 28 goals. But then kind of peters away for the next 5 or 6 years and does nothing. But Mane just keeps doing 15, 20 goals every year for the next 6 years. Then I would rate Mane higher because his longevity at being one of the top players in the league has remained. And that isn't to plug Ryan Giggs into a gap. It's purely to turn around. And I'll give you an example because Some of my favourite Man United players only play for one club, but I could never vote them the greatest players ever. Because what I value about the greatest players ever is people that have done it in multiple leagues. So you would never see me sit there and go, Ryan Giggs is the greatest player ever because he did it all in one place. Because that isn't my logic. My logic is when you've done it in the 3 hardest leagues in the world and you've been one of the best players in each of those leagues, that's almost untouchable. Because
Terry, I see what you're saying, but I'm saying, look, with the Mane situation, even when you use like your measuring sticks and my measuring sticks, using output as well. Like we can't forget I think the first 2 seasons Sterling had at City, he was horrendous. Let's just say it as it is. He wasn't that good. Last season he had a bad season as well. With Mane, he scored 10 plus goals, literally even from the Southampton days.
So, but you can't. But also, what you've then got to look at is, you've given Gerrard a pass because of bad teams, bad management. So when City weren't as good without Pep Guardiola, but you're now putting that against. My issue is I don't mind
you literally just compared oil and water.
No, it's the same logic. It's not as big. It's not as big.
You have a team of champions.
It's not a bigger drop off. Some of Gerrard's teams had won Champions Leagues. At the end of the day, the drop off isn't as hard, but the logic is the same. He also joined Man City as a very young man, and that has to be taken into. He didn't just leave as a young man. He left under the biggest cloud I've ever seen a player leave a club in. The pressure on him to perform at City. You like context. You can't remove the context of the nastiness that the Liverpool fan base and the media put upon him after leaving. All these things count. My point is this. My logic doesn't... People call me a flip-flop in the comments. My logic doesn't change. People say that your logic is because you're trying to back up Cristiano Ronaldo, but my logic will remain in 10 years' time. It doesn't change.
Look, Terry, my only issue with the Ryan Giggs argument on longevity is when you look at the goal and assist output, he achieved 7 seasons out of over 20 with 15 goals and assists. And the other, however many, 13, 14, they were below 15 goal and assist seasons. So it wasn't as though you're doing, when your point about Mane doing 15 in consecutive seasons, I would hear if that was what Giggs did, but he didn't. That was my issue with the longevity.
And I get that, but again,
Mane did that and Sterling didn't.
But I'm talking about 20 goals in inside forwards and left wingers, where midfielders are very, very different. You're talking about a difference of 20 to 30 yards further up the pitch you start and play. There's one other thing about Ryan Giggs, and this is true because I want this to be. I can't believe Opta haven't done it. 2004 saw a change in how we calculate stats. Yeah. So it was a lot easier to get assists. So the majority of Ryan Giggs' years as a winger, nearly 14 years as a player, his assists were only big chances created. And by the way, Robert Pires would see an increase. Steven Gerrard would see an increase because they played 4 or 5 years in that. Yeah. So I really want to see what happens if Opta were to go to the beginning of the Premier League, rewatch they don't have to even watch the games, just watch the damn goals and recalculate. I hazard that players like Robert Pires, like even the likes of Ginola that we laughed at for having low outputs, I almost guarantee that you'd see Ryan Giggs. My guess would be anything between 80 to 120 additional assists over a 20-year career. Because what I never used to see given back then days is like Giggs squares it to Scholes. Scholes takes 3 touches and puts it in the top corner. That never used to be considered an assist, and it now does. And I think when you're comparing, that's the thing with stats. Goals, you have to look at the roles that people play. It's very different now. Their job is to score. It wasn't. When it comes to assists, it's very hard because you go back and look at some seasons and it's like, how did Robert Pires only get 4 assists when he was putting all them crosses in? It doesn't make sense to me. And I think it needs to be relooked at too.
Like when you look at, and just to like expand my argument for the longevity, when you look at Ryan Giggs, people are saying he was very instrumental at the beginning parts of, the early 90s, and don't let my baby face fool you. But when you do look at his stats, his greatest 5-year period came in the 2000 eras. And in terms of his actual output for the team, those next 5 years were the greatest from 2000 to about 2005, 2006. And his early seasons, he had 2 seasons where they were more than 15 goals and assists between 1992 up until 2000.
But it's about the expectation though, Jules, because if you got, for instance, I think it was in like the 90 once, I don't remember which season it was. I was looking at it. So I was looking at it in the 95-96 season, he got like 11 goals and 10 assists.
Yeah.
That was massive for that was,
and the 93 season, which was his other very good season,
which was his best. And he actually in that season got used as a striker a few times because we had some problems in those areas.
And in between, there was some less goal. And I guess that's my major point. His best seasons in terms of him achieving high goal and assist outputs consistently back to back came from
So-
2000
so
to 2005.
And I totally agree with that. At the same time, I think the assist stats need to be looked at. But at the same time, he did for Man United what a lot of Chelsea fans talk about Eden Hazard doing. It was the pivotal in the play in terms of, he might have been the guy that started the move, was he a pass? And I think that's why, for me, it's an important thing. And that's the problem with those eras. It's hard because things weren't calculated the same way. But it has been a 2.5.
Been able to see it as well.
Yeah, and I
you're
watched
one of the only people who've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit for me. The only bit that troubles me, the challenges don't trouble me. The bit that troubles me is honestly when people tell me that he wasn't pivotal and he wasn't a driver. It just isn't true. Like I can tell how he felt every time I saw Ryan Giggs start a match for Man United, as I just felt relaxed because I knew he would deliver. Like I don't remember him. He had that 1 year, and it was all because of his hamstrings. Might have been personal things now with Ryan Giggs, but it was his hamstrings. They said right, like where he was really bad, and the Man United crowd was pretty unforgiving. But he was just. For me, he had loads of brilliant performances, but he was always a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I just never remember him having very many bad games. In nearly 1,000 appearances. He was just, even when he was like in his 40s, and it was like he's starting in midfield, barring when we went up against, at that point, Barcelona's and the very best teams in the world, I just was always comfortable. And I always remember watching him play against Chelsea in the Champions League in about 20. It was the game where we won 1-0 at Stamford Bridge by Rooney. He got the assist for that. And then we played them a week later at home. And I think we scored first. They then got a goal back. And it was like, shit, if they score another goal, they go through. And we literally scored from the kickoff, and he set up Park Ji-sung. And that game, I was watching it with a couple of Chelsea friends of mine. And I remember how angry they were because they were teasing me before the game started. Oh, our midfield is going to destroy this old pensioner in your midfield. And it was like still in Champions League games at 38 years of age. He was a driving force in getting us to the final, I believe, that year. And I just feel with Ryan Giggs, so much of what he did was kind of forgotten about. But it's to my Mo Salah point, because he was the poster boy in the early years at Man United. He was the next George Best. But then other players came along, which the media and the club used as its poster boys. And he was almost not amongst Man United fans, outside of Man United, was just sort of weirdly forgotten about. And and that's what's happened to Mo Salah up until this last year, and then he's risen to the top again. It's why when he got that player of the Sports Personality of the Year award and the PFA Player of the Year, a lot of Man United fans were annoyed because he didn't deserve it that year. But you could almost tell that it was like, we've actually ignored how good this guy is for too long. We shouldn't have done. So they gave him the award out of sympathy, which is stupid. He just got ignored when he shouldn't have been. But look, that's my view. Everyone's got a different one. Everyone who's tuned in to this 2 hour and 36 minute long stream, thank you. I didn't realize it would go. It's been a good chat. I've enjoyed it. All the super chatters, thank you.
Smash food for this.
Sorry, owe you food.
That was food. You have us here starving.
Cool. I'll send. I think by the time it arrives from where I live, it'll be a little bit cold in LA, Jess. But I'll get it sent. Everyone who's tuned in, I really appreciate it. Smash that like and share button before you leave. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless.